We are live. Going old school, man. Doing our raw recording sessions the way we did year one of Cartoonist Kayfabe. People are starting to trickle in. A little bit. I believe so. Yep. There they are. They're starting to trickle in. Alright, so I'm ready if you are, Jimmy.
Give me 1 second. I just want to pull up this video.
Yeah. Yeah, if you just keep hitting down.
Yeah, got us.
Sick. And sounds off?
Yeah, I have it turned all the way down. Yeah, you ready?
Yes, sir. There's my placeholder, so I know what video it is. Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
And let's do that one more time. It always starts a little rough, people. Hit it again. Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Before we get into the video, gotta let you guys know that Jimmy and I are going to be doing some traveling in October. This is coming up sooner than later, people. Thursday through Sunday, October 6th through 9th, we're going to CXC, Cartoon Crossroads, Columbus, Ohio. Going to be bringing our comics and stuff there for a really awesome festival in a very comic literate town. Baltimore Comic-Con is the end of the month, October 28th through the 30th. That's the birthplace of Cartoonist Kayfabe, boys and girls, man. So very special, near and dear to our hearts. In the middle there, October 22nd, Jimmy's going to be going to Jacksonville Public Library for a zine fest, and he's the man of the hour there. So make sure you stop by if you're in town and go meet the man himself. October is getting close, man. So here's the official Cartoonist Kayfabe-tober drawing prompts for your Inktober month of October, man. A bunch of good stuff that I can't wait to see drawn by the very deft hands of the Cartoonist Kayfabe audience. And the comic and the videos that we make are brought to you by the comic books that we make. And this is what we have on the docket right now, man. Trigger Warnings is going to be coming into stores within the next couple of weeks. Here it is in all of its glory. So much extra material for you to latch onto if you got the issues. Jimmy has Hulk Grand Design on the stands right now. Monster and Madness, 2 issues of that, but it's going to be collected in one of those handsome treasury editions at the end of the year. And back in print is Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Alive, collecting all of Jimmy's Image Comics versions of Street Angel. And without further ado, Jimmy, can we talk about the most 90s Spider-Man comic that ever existed? Erik Larsen, 6-issue Revenge of the Sinister Six, from Spider-Man number 18 through 23.
I bought all of these off of the stand back in the day. Got rid of them, rebought them, as per most of my collection at this point, it feels like. I had read some of Erik Larsen. I started reading comics when McFarlane was wrapping up his Amazing Spider-Man run.
Yeah.
And it was followed by Erik Larsen. And it's funny, like one of the letters pages in here alludes to that, how he followed McFarlane on Hulk. Although he only drew, I think, 1 issue of that.
Yeah.
But followed him on Amazing Spider-Man for a long run. And then followed him on Ejectiveless Spider-Man here for this run. And also issue 16, which was a filler issue that he did.
With the Beast, right?
Team up with the Beast. And at this point, though, he's writing, he's inking himself. And I liked Erik Larsen up to this point. This was like going to another level.
Yeah.
This really felt like, where's Erik Larsen been? I probably cut out of the last few issues of his Amazing Spider-Man run. So when I saw these, it was like, wow, man, this dude is just, he's here. Like it felt like he was no longer in McFarlane's shadow and he was completely his own guy and he was a badass. All the stylistic ticks that made him are on display. And it's like, that's awesome. That's what I was looking for in an artist, were these guys who were stylistic but were also unique. And Larsen brought all that. And it could not have been easy to follow McFarlane on Spider-Man books.
He's following the template, though, where in those 1990s, you could hotshot your comics. Somehow, like, I don't know, Tom DeFalco, Danny Fingeroth, whoever the editor is, they were letting these guys hotshot these books with all kinds of weird, incongruent team-ups, cameos, and stuff like that. Man, McFarlane would be bringing in Ghost Rider and Wolverine for these Spider-Man stories. So we got a healthy sampling of that. Not to mention Solo. He shows up a time or two.
The guys who don't land, I think of Solo in this and Shotgun in the John Romita Jr. Punisher and Daredevils. Yes. I was so on board for those, like, I guess, knockoff Punishers.
Right.
And they did not click.
Let's jump into things because we got 6 issues to look at here, dude. So without further ado, we're going to begin with issue number 18. Cover, sick as fuck.
This also feels like, Larson is a comic book fan.
Absolutely.
And this feels like a dude who's a comic book fan.
Of superhero comics.
Right. And you can imagine him channeling and loving Ditko and the whole history of Spider-Man, all the great stories. It feels like this is his chance to really get in there and have fun with it.
Right.
And I think these dudes were critical of Michelini, the writer on Amazing Spider-Man. Yeah. And they were eager to go out and kind of do these fun books. And I was critical of Spider-Man. Like I always say, he's this whiner and he's got a supermodel wife. What's he complaining about all the time?
Right.
I felt like these artists channeled that. Like, it's pretty fun. Although I will say, as we get going, some of the Larson Peter Parker stuff, I was like, all right, tone it down. Everybody's a wise ass.
Right.
in these 6 issues.
So what you were sort of saying, not to put words in your mouth, but Larson being a fan of the superhero comic, understanding that language, I think it begins right here on page 1 where, if we want to get bougie, I believe the term is in medias res, begin the story in the middle, and you have an action-packed sequence. This ain't some bullshit. There's some comics that we're going to be recording this week, where not only do they start at the beginning, but they literally start at the beginning of time, the creation of Earth.
So true. It's cool to see him doing classic splash pages. Like, I don't know that this is a great splash page, but you can see he's kind of playing with that structure, and it's something that would serve him well in Savage Dragon, and it's something that spoke to me when he gets to Dragon. So, like,
I would say this is a great splash page, man.
There are some good ones. There are some good ones.
With Spider-Man about to pounce on the fella. Like, I'm buying it.
Interesting use of a mechanical font here by Rick Parker, one of my favorite letterers. But like, you see him pulling out, that must be a paste up of the Sinister Six.
Yeah. I wouldn't be surprised if there's some college student there in a bullpen who's in charge of that part. Greg Wright on the colors here, and he really shows up in a strong way.
And again, this is the formula that we're going to see in Savage Dragon. Splash page, double splash page.
That's the Jack Kirby template of 70s, Fourth World, Eternals, the Marvel stuff that Kirby came back to do.
And probably the stuff Larson was buying off the stands.
Sure. And, let's project forward a little bit, even though we're going to go through this thing page by page, but this is a proto Super Patriot.
100%. Even the story of this character is Super Patriot.
Yeah. And down to the idea that it's like a super serum, like the next generation Captain America type guy. So happy that he didn't give Marvel that design.
There used to be a proposal that would float around, and I think it was for an X Factor overhaul that Larson had, and Super Patriot was part of that. And it was kind of this character. It was like, I don't know, Super X, Patriot X, something like that. But I mean, it was real kind of a hybrid between that character and Super Patriot.
When you get enough Eric Larson comics, or put it this way, enough comics from any cartoonist that you like, you start to see where they place value and where they don't. And one of the places that Larson does not place much value is on very detailed backgrounds. Right. So here you have just a perspective grid.
You know what I like about it, though? It carries over these 3 panels. There's a term for that, and I don't know it, but it's where, like, your panels go kind of across, like a background goes across several panels, and that's what you have there.
Yeah.
But it's great visuals, like there's so much excitement there of both Spider-Man breaking the panel and Ghost Rider. You get these big characters.
Yeah, and that's he's good for that stuff, these big bombastic images. But I absolutely, even as a kid reading this stuff, man, I made note that, like, where are they supposed to be?
Yeah, they are like high-tech labs and things throughout here. I think this is a mall or something. This is some public space where they're at in this sequence.
It's the same mall from Youngblood #1. A bunch of speed lines and a bunch of grid marks. And his cityscapes, right? This is the stuff where, as a kid, when you're really starting to get into making your own comics and you see these kind of backgrounds, that is so manageable. Like, you could potentially do that. You know what I'm saying? And to see that is fantastic. Also, thinking about these image guys and the anchor pages, the idea of money shots on every page. I was thinking about it this past week. One of the reasons why I gravitated toward those comics when I was like looking on the racks was this was an era where I definitely wanted to grow up to draw comics, and I was looking on the shelves for like full bodies of figures to copy, and the more the merrier. And in like a Buscema comic or like the Marvel House style comics, you wouldn't always get that. They place a lot of value in the storytelling, but it's those image cats who had that cool figure on every page. X-Men 1, Jim Lee makes sure to give you a cool Colossus, a cool Psylocke, and I was eating that stuff up.
Yeah, there's a real sense of the visual in this stuff, and certainly the emphasis on visual is on the characters.
Yeah.
And it's fun to see. We're basically going to see like the new Fantastic Four reunite here.
In a way, right?
Yeah, I think the whole cast shows up. Maybe not Wolverine. I guess we don't get Wolverine in that.
Replace him with
Ghost Rider, you know, it's perfect if you're going to have guest stars. You want to bring in the hot characters. Usually it's Spider-Man who's showing up in like issue 3 or 4 of the new series.
Yeah.
But in this case, it's like, who are the hot characters?
Exactly. Yeah, totally, man. And then there's like the low tier guys that you want to pump up, like Deathlock. Great pose here, man, with the lighting on the costume.
He does a lot of really cool stuff with lighting throughout this run.
Yeah.
And especially on Spider-Man, whether it's double lighting or putting that face half in shadows, there's a lot of cool attention to that.
Who knew? Sandman was a good guy for a hot minute. And of course he's going to show up to a residence of somebody who's very important to him. But see, there's no wasted movement in a Erik Larsen comic.
It's very true.
You set up an establishing shot, you create a conflict, and wash, rinse, repeat, because we got Sinister Six villains to deal with, plus Spider-Man and all of his foibles.
It's a giant cast, and rereading these things, one thing that stood out is the amount of words per page. It's treated like everybody's first comic, right? Like, we're going to get recaps and origins of every character all the time.
Yeah, it gets pretty ridiculous after a while, man. Gotta give Doc Ock some adamantium octopus tentacles.
It's a clever gimmick for Dr. Octopus, because it really does elevate him to like heavyweight status.
Yeah, and he needs all the help he can get with that haircut. Looking like Dumb and Dumber.
It's so true.
Also, like, he's the main guy getting the Sinister Six back together. And I don't know, man. Maybe I missed it, Jimmy, but it's pretty unclear to me what the whole point is. Is there revenge? Is it specifically to go after Spider-Man? He gets everybody together, gets all these cool weapons. They put a lot of emphasis on, we got to get these like extra dimensional weapons, but I don't think they ever explain what for.
They're planning to take over the world.
Oh, of course.
Their aim is much bigger than Spider-Man.
By the way, man, if these villains, man, that hooked him up with these adamantium tentacles, like, maybe you don't let the dude strap him on and finesse him before he gives you that bag of cash.
Yeah, this is Terminator. Like, you're not handing the guy the guns and the ammo right on the counter.
But it does give Larsen that opportunity to just put these shapes everywhere.
The other thing that stood out to me going through here is how much there's so much movement. Like, you're not getting the character in the same pose twice.
No.
It is a lot of just energy on the pages, like a radical amount of energy, you know, because I think of all the comics we read this week, how none of them look like this in terms of like characters are diagonal and sideways. With Doc Ock, you've got these arms flailing all over the place. It is just chaos on these pages. Shouts
again to Greg Wright with the colors on a lot of this, because he'll do that thing that you sort of make note of in a lot of works that we look at, where we got this green figure with this kind of wine colored background. Make our guys pop a little bit. Don't confuse them with the background materials. Boy, Erik Larsen uses every opportunity to use his weird screen tones when it comes to MJ and her outfits. And this is also that era, you know, it's pre-Google image search. So you have to do your own legwork in order to like have the contemporary fashions of the day with your supermodel and shit. So like all these dudes were drawn just the most basic dresses and accessories and fashions on their female characters.
This is usually a wallpaper print. Am I right?
It is, man. I recently used it on my new issue of Red Room. It's a blanket.
Nice.
Blanket print.
I love this as a spread, and I don't know if he had control over that, but even as a two-page scene, the spread works real well. But Mary Jane coming in and going away, like, that's really good storytelling for anchor panels on a domestic scene.
Yeah.
and then you get your Stray Bullets 8-panel grid, but across a spread. Very cool. And this is a fun storyline. Like, I like that he works Mary Jane into this. It's one more piece of, you are getting your money's worth with these issues.
Yes.
They're far more dense than I remember, and they're far more dense than what I think of like a Rob Liefeld comic of the time period, even a McFarlane comic of the time period, that would have a lot fewer panels,
right,
and bigger panels, and maybe no Mary Jane subplot.
Yeah.
So it's kind of cool to see this stuff. It seems like it's something that Larson is interested in.
And he brings that into Savage Dragon, certainly. And it's a very formulaic approach that he uses also, where he'll have his schmoz, like almost the entire comic is the schmoz. And every now and then he'll give you a page or two per issue of B story, we'll call it. In this case, it's an Arnold Schwarzenheimer flick, which by the way, that exact name is used in parody in like a million sitcoms, a million other comics, movies, all sorts of parodies. And the sort of, you can't just let Peter Parker have a good go at it. He always has to have some sort of conflict. And the conflict here is that MJ is going to get this big chance to be in a movie, but she's going to have to show her titties to Arnold Schwarzenheimer. And Pete doesn't know how he feels about it. Yeah,
because it's not just Schwarzenheimer. It would have been also J. Jonah Jameson and all his co-workers at the Daily Bugle. Awkward.
Great to see the Eric Larson able to play around with all these villain characters, dude. Great colors.
This is what you want. Like, if you think of this as Eric Larson's swan song after years of Spider-Man, it really is like, let's play the hits.
Oh, and just a big wooden floor, by the way.
It's funny how much that wooden floor resembles the motion lines.
Absolutely.
Spider-Man. That might be one where the colorist could do a little more variation there.
Yeah, that's true. But nighttime Spider-Man colors, that's not something you could take for granted. You just can't do it. In nighttime skin tones and things. Pretty cool.
This gradient to me suggests early digital colors.
Absolutely, because Greg Wright is playing with colors that are not a part of the standard 64 colors that they use for the first 50 years of Marvel Comics. It's definitely like more subtle hues, and we'll see better and better approaches as the issues go forward. Where we leave off in this issue, love the Spidey outfit with just the eyes and silhouette there with the Spidey sense and the negative silhouette of an impending threat. Great place to leave it. Let's keep rocking.
A lot of setup, man. That's a lot of stuff. I was surprised how dense these issues were going back through them after 25 years. Geez, 30 years almost.
Oh, yeah. Another great little splash page. You got to twist up Spidey. I remember on at the height of the speculator boom on a home shopping network when John Romita Sr. was on there with John Romita Jr. And he was drawing a quick Spidey for the audience. And he was like, if you don't draw Spidey twisted up or in motion, it's not Spider-Man. You're not drawing the character.
I like the webbing that he's putting on the costume, too. It's a super thin line.
Yeah. Creating conflict between the Sinister Six guys, which is a reasonable thing to do.
Heck of a close-up on Doc Ock, too.
Yeah.
And I'm not so much referring to the drawing as just being able to put a close-up that's that large on a page, and it doesn't steal anything. You still get a fair amount of action on that page.
Yeah.
But it's a nice variation of shots.
Good proportions and all that stuff. And drawing at that size, I think that's hard to maintain, which might suggest to me that he does rough small and blows them up and does some light boxing, perhaps.
Yeah, I have no idea.
Turning our Sandman to glass.
Lots of good Spider-Man poses.
That's another one of that. And redraw this shit.
That cool shading on his face.
Yeah.
And I like that he carries it over into things like the deltoids and stuff.
Yeah, totally, man. Yeah, it's all that underplane, and it's a weird screen, by the way. It's not just your average dots.
Yeah, some of the drawing, every now and then, his scratchy lines, they almost go Bill Sienkiewicz, where like you can almost feel the nib scratching across the paper.
One of the things I always liked about his art style was how organic it was compared to the rest of those Image guys. Like very clear ink lines, not that pristine Scott Williams approach.
Yes, he gets further into like Dragon. he leans into that I think of as cartooning. Like the characters really do become very cartoonish in their proportions.
I'm telling you, Jimmy, man, at this time, I really thought that he's measuring every other millimeter and has a T-square to create those lines. I had no knowledge that there would be a screen where that's possible.
Totally.
His Hulk is interesting, man, because I think of him as like a Kirby guy, but this isn't quite a Kirby-ish Hulk.
This is my Hulk that I kind of check out on as a reader, and it's the I call him Professor Hulk, and he looks decent here because he's not wearing like the full Professor Hulk costume, but it's the tapered waist that really ruined the Hulk for me. It's weird to think that would be a detail, but that's part of Hulk's charm, is that he's this other proportion of a character. If you silhouette him, the other guys don't look like him. Once you give him the small waist and silhouette him, now he's just a giant muscle dude.
It would be stuff like this whenever you see it in comics. Often, John Romita Jr. will not bury his construction in his final pencils. But this stuff was very instructive to me as a kid, like learning to draw. Whenever this would like sneak into a actual comic page.
And this, you're looking at like the fingers, the frozen fingers on Sandman?
And the various planes of it. Like this many knuckles.
I clarified only because I love this panel, 3-panel sequence, because yes, we get a good Sandman shot in the foreground of those 3 panels, but you also have action going on. Like, it's a very creative way to have a lot happening to create depth.
Harkens back to the silhouette sequences from that Frank Miller, Dennis O'Neil annual with Doc Ock getting run through the offset press at the Daily Bugle.
Yeah, there was a lighting thing earlier that looked like a Frank Miller kind of treatment too.
It's so funny. I remember like when I would copy Eric Larson stuff, I would be so precise with these little marks.
I just heard Stallone was doing an unboxing video of a Cobra figure and pointing out details on the figure about forearm muscles. And he's like, it's genetic. I have that forearm muscle here on my own.
He does, I feel like too, that's man. Him. I know exactly which one he's talking about. You see that thing pop the fuck out. Was Larson the guy that created the first like broken glass like eye?
I don't know the answer to that. The broken eye thing, like the broken glass eye thing, I don't remember it until rereading this. So I don't know who starts that.
I think that's so sharp looking.
It's weird though. What does that imply that costume is made out of?
I'm telling you, man, if you have that those old latex masks and you have them for 10, 20 years in mom's basement and only pull them out for Halloween, there's some dry rot that starts to happen with that shit. Love kayfabe back muscles. It really makes me feel good about kayfabe and back muscles myself.
Those look pretty good.
3 shoulder blades, though.
That's true. A couple extra. It is the Hulk.
Yeah, but it's not forearms.
Oh, man. And getting distracted here, Dr. Octopus just destroys the Hulk in this first matchup.
And these are like pretty dopey looking arms against our guy.
They are. Yeah, they are. The big thing is getting Hulk off his feet. It reminds me of sometimes like Blob seems like he was around a lot in the early 90s, and that's how you would beat the Blob.
Right.
Like once you got him off the ground, it seemed like he lost all of his powers of being the immovable object or whatever he had going for him. And I feel like that's what Doc Ock does there with Hulk. This is weird because like it feels like, oh, we're at the end of the issue because there's a letters column.
Yeah. And we're at the end of the Eric Larson piece, but there's for 2 issues there's a Scott McDaniel story that carries on, but maybe it's like a little bit of catch up to keep Eric Larson on that monthly schedule.
No,
what is it?
This is when his house burnt down.
Oh, Jesus Christ!
Yeah, so there's going to be 2 of these issues where like he's still producing the issues, but they're like a half size for him, and it's because of that Oakland fire.
Let me just knock wood real quick, man. That's just scary.
It is, and I didn't realize this was the timing of that either, because that's one of those legendary moments. Like if you follow Larson back then, and he would talk about all the comics he created as a kid, and then he lost them in this fire. This is when that fire happens.
Okay, man. So obviously, I don't know that I was 100% wrong then, because we're giving the guy a chance to keep that monthly schedule.
Right.
It's just the added complication of the goddamn.
I think it's a shrewd move on Marvel's as a publisher's part, because you're selling books. Like this is the height of the speculator boom. These books are selling in big numbers. You're getting a nice royalty. you don't want to plug in an inventory story.
No.
If you can avoid it. And this is a pretty creative way to avoid it.
And it says a lot about Larson as being a maker of comics. Like, you had this like tremendous hardship in your life, and you're still able to like figure out how to make those pages.
Yeah, it's kind of incredible. I feel like that could just, I can't imagine that. I get a kitchen remodel and it's like I'm on the shelf for 8 weeks. Burning down a house, like, I mean, that's everything, you know.
Yeah. I remember insurance putting us up at a different place because the sort of the bathroom exploded. Like, there was a whole issue at the house, and it put us up in a hotel. But I would still come up every day and work on comics and just, I don't know, pee in the sink or something like that. Nova was always a character Larson would talk about. Yeah, I think in our Wizard episodes it was talking about he like maybe he's going to do a mini series.
I think he ended up doing one, and maybe like Chris Marinin drew it or something.
He did the writing on that?
I think so, and it might have been a couple of years later, like after some of the heat with Image cooled off a little bit. I can't remember the exact timing, but I know he always talked about wanting to do a Nova run.
This shit worked on me too, by the way, man. Whenever like these kind of characters would get sprinkled in, there's the Maximum Carnage shit where it would be like Cloak and Dagger and Iron Fist would show up. Then I started drawing Iron Fist for a couple of months. I never drew Deathlock in my entire life.
Hard to draw.
Looks
cool though.
Yeah. When that miniseries came out, I got it at this like little used bookstore, and the tragedy of the character, Jimmy, I believed, man. I was real sad for him.
Look at the reflection in the floor. Larson may not be doing laying out a grid for his background, but man, that's pretty nice detail of the reflection on the ground.
Yeah, that looks sharp though, doesn't it?
It does.
It's pretty cool. It's a good approach.
He does some cool stuff with the Spider-Man costume this run.
Here comes Jimmy's favorite character.
Here we go.
I always thought that Solo like first shows up here, but it seems like he's established.
I think he appeared in Amazing Spider-Man.
Yeah.
I don't know that he's very established, but I think it's not a first appearance.
They really tried to sell the kids on this guy, man, because I know he gets his own series at a certain point. Now we're taking things to the 1990s, man, and we're going to need a bigger boat, or in this case, we're going to need a lot more webs. And it's an excuse to put guns on Spidey.
Yeah, I feel like Rob Liefeld would approve.
And once again, using those crazy screen tones.
I've never seen that screen.
Yeah, I have that one for sure. But look at the dress, dude. Totally basic. Like, I think this is what a dress looks like. Kind of dress.
No Google image search on dresses.
No. And I bet you Eric Larson had that lamp. Like, that's just too specific a lamp. Design.
Yeah, I wonder if he was running a morgue file. You know, he would have been of the era when you were supposed to have a good morgue file.
Well, that's true, but there is a lot of kayfabe happening with everything that's not people.
And I mean, at this point, he would have lost the morgue file, right?
So hard to draw. Yeah, for sure. So hard to draw walking. Period. You know, it's hard not to make it look like Archie and Friends, because it feels weird to draw one leg smaller than the other.
It does. Hey, look at how flat his head is. It's such a flat top.
Oh yeah. He really does capture an innocence in his face though. Gives him the Spider-Man like the bulky bod, but that's
it keeps him young. Not a lot of lines on that face.
Yeah. So here we have Spidey with his ultra webs.
Yeah, souped up Spider-Man. This is like the Super Soaker. Yeah. Wasn't there like the deluxe Super Soaker that had a backpack?
I think so, yeah. And who's there to greet him? Solo. And Solo is like a Patriot Act, like post 9/11 vigilante. He's like, fuck terrorism.
Yeah, he's pretty hardcore. I was gonna say he's probably like can't exist in a book outside of the 90s, because he also has that feeling.
Right. Yeah, for sure. Greg Wright setting the mood, man. We have the nighttime Spider-Man colors established.
It works really well.
It does. It looks great. Gets to drop on our dudes. And they just straight up destroy his little web shooters. This is a great sequence, too, where Larson just wants to draw Carnage. Not the villain, but Carnography. So it's his chance to have a couple of pages of mowing down. Like, this is what every kid wants in a Spidey comic. Like, fuck Mysterio, kill that guy already. And you get your couple of panels of that. But, of course, it was but a dream. Or in this case, it was but a Mysterio illusion. And I think
That's
it's
a
about
clever use of
14,
Mysterio.
15 pages. Yeah. 14, 15 pages, man, so Larson can keep that deadline.
Like our underlighting on Doc Ock.
Yeah, this is an image that was reused on maybe the back of some Marvel Universe cards or something. But like that's something that they used in other licensed materials.
That's a good ending too, where Solo's still under Doc Ock's influence, and he's got a gun on Spider-Man, thinking he's about to execute Dr. Octopus.
Yeah, it's real good way to leave it.
Good visually, it works too, because we see him on top of Dr. Octopus, and only at the end do we get the explanation and see the panel review.
How about this this cover, man? Super iconic to our generation of cartoonists, I would say. Cyborg arm, laced up, stitched up, got the Buck 50 scar, and a little eyepiece, like a pirate.
This is iconic to me. That cover.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Deathlock. Back-to-back B-boy poses like Run DMC.
And I love how just through it Spider-Man is at this point. Leg taped up. It's great stuff.
Yes. And the Eric Larson Uzi is one of my favorite Uzis in comics. Total kayfabe stuff. You know, big rectangle with a little cylinder at the end.
I don't think of Larson as doing this kind of shading.
Mm-hmm.
It looks really good there.
It does. Real solid. And it picks up right where we left off. Once again, no wasted space. Like you set up that cliffhanger, you address the cliffhanger and fix it. Take care of that immediately because we got adventures to have right now, man. We can't be wasting time.
And again, coming off of that fire, it's almost like he's back on in form.
One more, another thing that is noteworthy is this is a Chris Iolopoulos, is that how you say his name, is on lettering duties here, who carries over with Larson to Savage Dragon for a couple hundred issues.
Oh, that's interesting. I didn't realize that he replaces, because Rick Parker's on at least the first issue.
Oh, yeah.
But yeah, Chris Eliopoulos, longtime letterer with Eric Larson.
So, I mean, man, if you fuzz out your eyes, you could almost see Super Patriot right there. Say it, Jim.
Full Moon Zine.
See, it's so formulaic, and I'm not saying this in any negative way, but like, you get your B story in there real quick.
This is still in the day of comic books. You know what I mean? Like, even though this is a 6-parter and would make sense as a book, it's still in that formula of like, okay, each issue we're going to check in on Mary Jane. We're going to, like, there's almost like the subplots that you're going to get a page or two of.
Yeah. How about that image?
Great.
That's got to be a 5-figure piece of original artwork.
It's a beauty.
And I bet you we know who has that too.
I really like that whole, all of it, like the metal textures. It's a good page for texture, having his costume next to the metal arm.
This right here feels Ronin-ish.
Mm-hmm. The stitches on the Spider-Man mask, I think, are really cool.
Yeah. I bet you this is what McFarlane saw and was like, you know what, man? That ain't bad.
Yeah, it probably wouldn't even register. Now we're in like the Weapon X labs.
Verbal diarrhea. How about that shit, huh, Jimmy?
That's a lot of exposition. Man, the whole spread.
Yes, I think in Splitting Image, Don Simpson makes fun of this kind of stuff from Larson, and it comes directly from Name Withheld.
It's amazing to think this is a 6-part story, and yet we still need this amount of density to get the whole story in there.
Look at these backgrounds, dude. A lot of templates.
That's what I said. It's the Weapon X backgrounds.
Yeah, and it'll be very clear, like when Greg Wright does some multi-color stuff with these backgrounds.
Yeah, that's the only difference. Shape-wise, like that's really what you were seeing in those Barry Windsor-Smith backgrounds for the lab. And that's Super Patriot.
Yeah, absolutely, man. And they, amongst all of this dialogue from Richard Nixon, we get the idea that this is like a super soldier, Captain America for the 90s kind of
100%
design. Dum Dum Dugan showing up. Everybody's favorite Howling Commando.
Yes.
Because he's the only one that doesn't look like everybody else.
The only one I can name.
Exactly.
Another good Spider-Man pose. Keeping that Frankenstein-like stitching everywhere.
When you get to these pages and you see all those words, man, you're just like, there's no way to
It's tough.
to trim that down just a touch.
It's amazing these tough guys are so full. It's the alternative of like the action movie tough guy, right? Like you need a supporting character to do all the exposition because it shouldn't be Deathlock.
And it's Deathlock telling us that he's a pacifist, but has the biggest guns. Look at our pacifist. And he's like, yeah, well, that's the struggle. I'm a pacifist, but look at what I'm doing.
Hey, man, he loves peace.
Fantastic.
Laying out all the slowly assembling this team. Yeah, there was a lot of Ronin in that shoulder pad.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of ads in this comic book.
It was good times.
There was a lot of energy spent from Dr. Octopus telling the fellas that they need to go. They can't just like settle for terrestrial warfare type weaponry. They have to go to another dimension to get some guns.
They did, and we haven't made a big deal about it, but they do like body counts in various places, and the body counts in this storyline. Well, there you go, 143,000 deaths plus in this other dimension, but they're also local. Like where that first Super Patriot soldier goes off.
Yeah,
I forget how many people he kills, but it's like 43 people or something.
Yeah.
It's a big body count in this storyline, and there is not a lot of tears shed for the 143,000 plus dead. That's a staggering number. Like, how do you say that in a doesn't that seem like something the editor should be like, we got to dial that down? Like wars don't have that many dead people.
Hey man, you don't know how many people exist on this planet in this extra dimension. That could be 1%.
Also, what does that do for like all the Sinister Six guys? Like you have just made them big time mass murderers. Like the top 6 mass murders in Earth history.
Right. Yeah, they're just you got to try out the weapons.
I guess
everything about these comics is overblown, so you gotta have that overblown death toll, man.
It's funny because that's something I didn't remember either. Was like the 150,000 body count.
I mean, it's one caption, like it's easy to look over.
It really is.
In the Alan Moore BBC Maestro master classes that he does, man, he talks about Mort Weisinger had a very hard, rigid rule that no more than about 250 words on a page, and I think we got a couple 500-word pages in this issue.
Right. It really is impressive going through seeing the way he distorts these bodies.
Absolutely, man. When you see him just draw like conventions and stuff, or if you get a chance to see his pencils, seeing how he builds the figures is pretty cool. And looking at the way he draws, like looking at these figures, like it feels like, he starts with odd stuff. Like he might start with this foot right here and then build out the figure from there. Like I've seen him do that kind of thing where, it starts off with a big Kirby fist and then it turns into, the Hulk running towards the camera.
In this age of like really hitting Google Images and having models for everything, like this is a lost art what he's doing in terms of the figures and really bending the figures around in different perspectives. Mm-hmm. Very few guys do that anymore. I mean, very few probably can do that anymore.
So we have our extra dimensional stuff. Our bad guys got their weapons. Now they're being beamed up into the mothership. Spidey's leaving Deathlock behind and just materializes back at home. There's a couple beats missing there, I think.
Well, you only have 6 issues to tell the story, Ed.
Yeah.
So you got to make some hard choices. Maybe we'll get one of those 500-word pages with explaining to Mary Jane where Spider what he's been up to all night.
So here's your new Fantastic Four, huh? Ghost Rider, Deathlock, Sleepwalker, and Hulk.
Sleepwalker replacing Wolverine in this lineup.
At some level, do you think that there's some editorial sort of decisions in this? Because Larson's a classic guy from the Silver Age, man. I feel like he's doing a bit of largesse to Marvel to try to help sell some schmuck characters.
It does, I should have looked it up, but Deathlock and Sleepwalker may have been new books this year.
They were, if they weren't this year, they were certainly new within the past couple years at this point, certainly. But
Ghost Rider's hot.
Yeah.
And then Hulk, maybe just a Larson favorite.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like he was somewhere in the middle of the pack. This is one of those where, like, I'm not that impressed with this as a splash page, but it is a splash page. If you ripped off the cover, you would still have this big arresting image to at least maybe draw your eye in.
Yeah. I wonder if this is like the establishment of the white lab coat, Dr. Octopus, which I like much better than the old spandex outfit. It feels updated to me. Dude, his Vulture's really great too, man.
He looks awesome.
Like, he really leans into the bird-like qualities of the character.
Makes me think of, like, we looked at Kelly Jones, that artist edition, and there were a couple of those almost caricatured kind of characters, you know, big nose or chin or something, brow. I would love to see that version of the Vulture there, based on, like, that's an amazing piece.
Yeah.
A lot of cartooning on that face.
Let's update Vulture for the 90s a touch.
Yeah.
Put a big-ass Uzi in his hand, and he looks unhinged.
Totally.
Ready to go after Doc Ock.
He should, too. That Vulture's another one of those, like, we've had talks about people don't use the age of the characters all the time. And if you're doing a teenager, there's a lot there. And if you're doing an older person, there's a lot there.
Yeah.
You know, I feel like as all of my loved ones are aging up, imagining one of them as a supervillain, you could have some fun with some of those characteristics.
Continuing our B story of Mary Jane being in a titty flick in a Cinemax movie. You know, it would be the equivalent. She would be Erica Eleniak in Under Siege. Right. You know, popping up from the birthday cake. Not a bad Hobgoblin.
I don't totally understand him.
Yeah,
I don't know that character very well.
Yeah, it's pretty weird, man. Like I was grabbing those comics when I was a kid, man. Like the Ron Friends issues that like introduced the character and like teased him out a whole lot. But you got me.
Purely from a visual standpoint, Electro next to Hobgoblin. What a weird, like,
because it looks like
sensibilities of very different character design time periods. I like that Parker's shaving and he's using like his bionic arm as part of the washing off his face.
Yeah, it turns out that bionic arm, it's a cast.
Right.
For those playing at home. He's just updating everybody, man.
Yeah.
Giving everybody big ass guns. And poor Sandman.
This reminded me of do you remember the Marvel Age of Elektra Lives Again, where Lynn Varley was coloring with that 64 color palette?
Yeah.
Reminded me a lot of that.
Sure. And that is some mucky. Is this the Lazarus Pits? Like, I guess Solo paints on his green outfit. So when he takes a bath, he's got to paint it on over again. It's like those cosplay chicks.
That's hilarious. Body painting.
A lot of 9-panel grids in this issue. A little Ditko-ish.
Hey man, when you're telling this scale of an epic, you need it.
Look at Dum Dugan. It looks like he's lumbering, dude. Like if it was Jurassic Park and you had a little cup of water, every step is rippling your juice.
Dum Dugan in spandex like that, I would read a one shot of him
smuggling plums. Got that man camel toe.
It is not a flattering costume for a World War II vet.
You got to have these shots, dude. Certainly another 5-figure piece of original art, right?
Yeah, this is cool. So Sinister Six is planned to take over the world. There's a Manhattan Hydra lab that they're going to invade that controls satellites that I guess they can wreck the world with.
The Soul Satellite.
Sleepwalker.
What a
Marvel's answer to Sandman.
Yeah. Sandman done right, they called it. What a B-lister. And his villains didn't help much more either, dude. Like, I got an issue or two, and like one of the villains just has an 8-ball billiard ball on his head. Like, that's the whole deal.
I don't remember him much at all. I think I probably bought issue 1 because I was probably buying every issue 1 at that time.
Yeah.
But man, he just didn't register with me.
Those Marvel Universe Series 2 cards would introduce me to a bunch of these characters, and it sort of worked on me. Like, I'd be like, oh, he's a rookie? I'll read that. You know, this is a comic for us. Like, the old-timers read Spider-Man, but I'll read Darkhawk.
This is some of what I was complaining about. Everybody has to be funny with their lines.
Yeah.
And it's like, just let Spider-Man be funny, and then he'll seem even funnier.
Yeah, it's real dumb. Like, they're all, like, using, like, old like pithy game show talk right there. Pretty dumb. Got to get rid of your sleepwalker pretty quick. See, it's this kind of stuff that makes me wonder if there was some editorial mandate where, you got to get him in there. And so you get him in and get him out real quick.
Yeah, I think you're right about that. Because otherwise, like, what would Larson's attraction to Sleepwalker
That's what I'm
be?
saying.
That
like,
had
he's
to
such
be
a
like
classic guy.
an editor saying, hey, you're going to have all these guests.
Yeah,
Put the new book guy in there.
right. I mean, dude, take that fucking hair off and put that fin.
Yeah.
Right?
Totally.
Like, we're there, dude.
100%. Because that is Dragon's build.
It is.
You know, and Dragon can get away with it because you don't have a history of him being as wide in the middle as he is in the shoulders.
Little in the middle, but you got much back. Got your money shots with everybody, man.
His Ghost Rider's pretty cool too. It's a very different interpretation of Ghost Rider.
I go back and forth with it,
and I'm all right with it.
Yeah. His fire is very specific. Like if you isolated any like segment of that fire, I am fairly confident that I would be able to call Eric Larson out as being the guy who drew that.
And again, finds ways to make these characters bigger than they could possibly be on a page.
We might have to start a new playlist, Jimmy, that where we call out Godzilla Meets Bambi.
Yes. Yep. That's exactly my thought reading this. And that's a Craven the Hunter character that's come back.
Yeah.
Gog.
Pretty wild stuff.
Bit of a deep pool on that one.
Which suggests the fandom of Larson, and I think is more evidence for...
This is, I think, a
Sleepwalker being nothing.
triple gatefold cover. Larson just posted like pencil roughs of this recently on Facebook.
Yeah.
Which was kind of wild because it was like, I just picked this one up and it's kind of neat to see it. And I have no idea what kind of records he has of, I think he has most of his original art. I think he has a ton of it.
Mm.
But it was kind of cool to see this piece.
Yeah. So
and you talk about like your,
here.
5 figures or whatever.
This is a 5 figure
What is
piece.
this thing worth?
Yeah,
a giant, oversized, everybody on the cover.
I was looking at this piece right here, and it's like, I don't know, man. I feel like that forearm muscle has to come in front. I don't know. I know it's like the wrist is back more.
Yeah.
But it feels funky.
Yeah, I would add, I think this knee's pretty good for a little bit of like an underlight and giving some dimensionality to a knee. It feels like you've got bones like meeting each other there in the middle.
Yeah.
It's pretty solid. And again, I love the shadow stuff that he's doing on Spider-Man.
Yeah, it's crazy. Like, that's a screen, but it's just the weirdest screens.
It's so organic, that pattern on his face. It almost looks like dry brush or something added to the screen. A couple screens ganged up or something.
Yeah.
Pretty unusual.
See, this is your Weapon X Lab kind of.
Yeah, different people watching this at home deciding whether or not to come out and join the battle.
Yes.
This whole time he's been trying to get the Avengers of the Fantastic Four to get on the case, and they're off on their own, having their own adventures. And now Mary Jane goes to meet with the producers.
Yeah, she's trying to see if she could get the part but not show the jugs. And we'll see how that turns out.
It's a pretty awkward storyline, and the storyline that he had with them in the issue 16 was them talking about having a kid and sort of like the risks involved, because like, what's he, is he a mutant? Like, it could be dangerous for her health. Kind of neat storylines. Yeah, there's actually some pretty good characterization for Peter Parker in these pages, like when MJ kind of cuts him down a little bit, the way that he sells the pain with kind of high school PTSD. I feel like that rings true. I love seeing this stuff. This is wild to me because you think like if we were all going to go start our own books in our own publishing company, how long of lead time would that be now, Ed? A year or something like that? Dragon is in here while he's working at Marvel, and we know that Marvel like kicks everybody to the curb or those guys leave or whatever, and like it's already scheduled for the printing press. Absolutely, man. And it's in all their stuff. Like there's Youngblood ads in X-Force. There's Wildcats ads in X-Men. And it's those late issues that you're starting to see a lot more
art T-Bear on the page than Jim Lee. Burning that candle at both ends, man.
And this whole thing, it just feels like if you're going to sell your original art, this is what you want to put on the pages.
This is Erik Larsen getting his shit in there as a
getting a new house payment together.
Pro wrestling parlance.
Dude's got a house to replace, man. Let's sell some pages.
Yeah, man.
It is fun though. I don't know if he knew that he was leaving. Like maybe they had all figured this out partway through the storyline. But it does feel like if you're leaving, draw everybody, draw all your favorites. You know, like put them on the page. Because it does feel like this is like an apex of Larsen at Marvel.
Yeah, and it's all his stuff, you know, like Hulk versus Thing. Come on now. He's probably itching to draw that for years. I wonder, I see this face and stuff, the way he builds these characters, his organic line. Like, I see a lot of Walt Simonson.
Yeah, Simonson, huge, definitely.
And even just with Chris Eolopoulos, or I'm sorry if I said his name incorrectly, but going John Workman with a lot of the lettering.
Larsen must specify that, because I feel like that carries over a lot in his Dragon stuff.
Yeah.
Great, cool lighting here, too.
Yeah.
Feels, I say Miller, but I mean, it could be anybody that's thoughtful in their light. It's probably Jansen more than Miller, some of those things that I think of as like double lighting or...
Yeah.
Man, and the chaos on the pages. Like when I would copy artists, this would be the kind of stuff that was impossible to copy.
Yeah.
It was almost like it defied the building the shapes out.
Right.
Or perspective grids.
It
was just like chaos.
When you see the way these guys draw sometimes too, like there's no real underdrawing a lot of times. You know, like they just go for it, man.
It also feels like you're benefiting from your letterer here, your colorist here.
Yeah, Eolopoulos, man, he earned his pay on this page.
He really did, and I love it. This may be one of my favorite pages in this whole run, but it's just, you start taking it apart, and it's chaos, but it might have also been one of the faster pages Larsen drew, because it's just like 4 or 5 figures all bouncing around, no real attention to perspective or anything. But you benefit from your assembly line on that page.
Jimmy, I hate to tell you, man, Doc Ock failed in his mission. He didn't win.
He's not out of it yet. Things are going to get worse. This is a clever little piece with Invisible Woman doing the force field.
Right.
It's pretty fun. And here's finally Sandman gets some payback. And just about kills Doc Ock.
Yeah, dude, the death of 1,000 paper cuts.
Yeah. Yeah, Spider-Man has to kind of pull back Sandman like, whoa, dude. Could have killed him. And, you know, you look at this. I was looking at this on the reread and trying to figure out exactly what's happening. And it's like all these shards of glass are like basically going through Dr. Octopus like bullets.
He comes back as Jigsaw.
Yeah. I'm with Spider-Man. Like, I think if you put all these glass shards through a dude, they're dead. Yeah. They're bleeding out totally. At the very least.
Absolutely. And that was wrapping up the Sinister Six part, but we've got to wrap up our B story, and it turns out that they just wanted MJ for her body in that flick, man. You know, like they weren't looking for her acting prowess, and she admits, you know, she's not the greatest actress in the world, but she didn't want to be humiliated by being a hunk of meat.
Right.
Enter their New York City brownstone, and there's everybody showing up for a little surprise birthday party. Happy ending.
That's a nice ending. It's cool that he raps on the B story.
Can't get much more 90s than the Revenge of the Sinister Six, Erik Larsen batch of issues, Jimmy.
Not only that, that really is the end of the Image dudes. Like, this is your sign off of the Image guys at Marvel at this time.
Yeah, pretty much. Like, you got your Jim Valentino sticking around for a touch longer.
Maybe, but he doesn't have a sign-off story. You know, that's like true. This feels like, see you guys. Let's go see what we can do at Image.
Yeah. Yeah.
This is what you're giving up. This is what we were unhappy and what you're going to lose. Here it is. This is what could have been, you know?
I read it when it came out. Haven't read it since, man. It's been 30 years, Jimmy.
Pretty fun to revisit.
Super fun.
I appreciate Larson's, I don't know, verve or something. You know, like it feels like he's really going for it on all of these pages. He's not calling anything in, despite like good reason to do so in the middle of this.
Right.
But you know, like so many of these guys, and you could even put me in this category. It is like a job, a profession. My relationship to these characters totally different than when I was reading them. Larson has that enthusiasm for these characters. You know, like it feels like there's nothing he wants to do more than making comics, and comics like this. I like that enthusiasm. It's very fun to see it in comics form because you don't see it that often.
Yeah, and you feel it on the page. It resonates.
Yes.
This ain't a job for him, man.
No.
He's been spending his whole life trying to get to this position.
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, this would be like the highest moment of his career up to this point. Yeah. And you could almost trace that trajectory. And then to think like what he goes on to do beyond this, like what a career. But yeah, big moment.
Fun to look at, fun to revisit.
Definitely.
Jazzes me up to get back to the drawing board. Jimmy, you good to go?
Yes.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. It's out there, Jimmy.
Hulk Grand Design, the oversized Treasury collection will be in stores in December. You need to pre-order that now. That is celebrating 60 years of the Incredible Hulk, condensing that down into a giant oversized Treasury edition with a fluorescent green cover that you are going to want to have under your Christmas tree and those you love. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, back in print from Image Comics, should be available in your local comic shop any day if it's not already there. And you can join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see a lot more of my comics, drawings, how-to, and download some of my out-of-print zines and mini comics there.
Here it is, man. Red Room Trigger Warnings, the trade paperback, coming to stores in a few weeks as of this recording. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game. In Red Room, there's about 60, 70 pages of extra material in this trade paperback. You might need to order this comic online because it's banned in some comic shops and banned in a lot of countries. So hit up my link tree in the description below this video. I made it very easy for you to scoop this comic up. I'm serializing new Red Room comics on my Patreon, patreon.com/edpiskor. $3 for the archive over there. And I have serialized comics that haven't hit paper yet. It's the next round of Red Room comics that won't hit paper till 2023. And you can get it all for $3. What else do you have out there, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise and fanny packs at the links below this video.
Another great way to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Give them those marching orders, Jimmy. We'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
So there it was, guys. One video down. One video down and, what, 7 more?
Yeah.
8 more? Something like that?
Something like that.
We've got a big day today.
We'll see how long all of our batteries last.
Yeah.
What's next?
Let's do Mad Men. So do your homework, everybody, man, and grab your copies before these vids go live. I'm gonna take a sip real quick. While we were recording, I saw some super chats come through, man. So thank you guys so much for the support that way. Much appreciated. I'm ready when you are, Jimmy.
Yeah, I'm almost ready.
Hit it. Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
My name is Jim Rugg.
In October, Jimmy and I are going to be doing some traveling. October 6th through 9th, we're going to CXC in Columbus, Ohio. October 28th through 30th, we're going to Baltimore Comic-Con. And in the middle there, October 22nd, Jimmy's going to be at the Jacksonville Public Library for a zine festival. In October, it's Kayfabe-tober, and this is the 2022 official Cartoonist Kayfabe drawing prompt list for your Inktober with a bunch of choice hits that I can't wait to see you guys draw. And these videos are brought to you by the comic books that we make. So these are the efforts that we have out there in the wild. Most recently, Jimmy has Hulk Grand Design, Monster and Madness, which is going to be collected in a Treasury Edition format. has Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Alive trade paperback in a new printing from Image Comics, collecting all of his Image Comics versions of Street Angel. Red Room Trigger Warnings is out in late September, and here it is right here in all of its glory. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit, good companion piece to go along with The Antisocial Network. So without further ado, Jimmy, let's take a look at Dark Horse Madman Comics #1 by Mike Allred.
Yeah, this is I think the third #1 Madman comic.
Yeah, a couple Tundra.
We had a Tundra. Was it Tundra or Kitchen Sink that did Madman Adventures? And one of the interesting notes, and I talk about it right from the cover get-go, the inking of Mike Allred in this issue. Because Madman Adventures, there's an issue that Mark Schultz inks. So like in some ways, I feel like Allred's still figuring out his ink line, and it would go on to be kind of heavier. When I think of Allred, it's a little bit different than this, but really nice inking throughout this issue. I love this cover with like the comics behind him that he's popping out of, the little disc toy gun. He had a vision for Madman pretty much from the get-go. Like this character, this book, his art, it always looked interesting from the beginning.
Can't sleep on that back cover.
Absolutely
by
not.
Frank Frazetta. In all of these issues, Frank Miller. Oh yes, because what I was going to say was the first issue that I scooped up off the racks myself had a Frazetta back cover.
That's part of that vision I talk about, because he was always getting other cartoonists, like Klaus has one.
Lots of people.
Yeah, I mean, he's got to have hundreds of them at this point.
There's 2 sets of trading cards that were done with all of, Kevin Nolan, you name it, Dave Stevens. I wonder if that was, I don't know who put those out. Was it Kitchen Sink? Because if so, then it's probably Kevin Eastman Tundra money funding the commissions for all of this artwork. Because he got...
I think Allred invested in himself, because he paid me for one. And
that's much later. This is some different shit, man. This early 90s stuff.
I don't know, man. It seems pretty smart on his part to have all... Jack Kirby, dedicates this issue to Jack Kirby, and we get the Jack Kirby version of Madman.
That's so sick,
It's really cool, all seeing everybody's versions of this character.
Yeah, for sure. And it starts off beautifully with that, like, Rick Moranis from Ghostbusters, little colander with the wires on the head.
Yes.
Great looking characters. When you see this guy, man, it's like Allred's a Doom Patrol fan.
Yeah, he looks really good. All these characters look really good. And Laura Allred on colors from the beginning.
Yeah.
Mike Allred lettering this himself.
Yes, I love his lettering, by the way. Here's some dry brush. You never see that with Allred. And there's even a little, like, almost accidental dry brush with some of the hair there, because he gets that chunky thick line for like the outer holding line, and then he'll go kind of thinner on the inside. And at this time, he was definitely praised very much for his ink slinging.
Look at how he's drawing tails on the balloons, like a rounded bottom of the tail.
Yeah,
I like that. It's a guy who's making his own comics, and it's like, do everything your own way.
I love the storytelling of this stuff, man, where you got these little 4-panel pieces, big image 4-panel pieces, like splitting it up a bunch. More interesting textures on the almost like UPA Mr. Magoo cliff back there.
You think that's an influence from like a Chris Ware?
I do.
And I guess, like I mentioned those various companies, also like Caliber was doing versions of Frank Einstein in graphic music.
Oh yeah, man, we got those issues. We'll have to do that.
Yeah, I thought about digging those out.
We'll have to do that episode, man, because it is actually very cool to see how his work evolves over time. Certainly, graphic music stuff. It felt like Bernie Merlot like had an influence on his work. They worked in tandem for sure, but some of the ticks, the marks that he was making, felt like them to me.
I like this panel a lot. I think that's a cool composition for essentially Talking Heads.
And it's all here, like all the tropes of kitschy, like there's the kind of kitsch that Dan Clowes brought to the table. And this is another approach of some of the same tools, some of the same recipe.
Definitely.
It's really cool to see how these guys distill it in their own ways.
Some of these finer lines remind me of Kevin Nolan.
Yeah.
And I also think, you're seeing some of him still, Mike Allred, still working out some of his style.
Even Laura Allred's colors, like she's figuring stuff out too. this is a little bit like sort of all over the place in a way, but she becomes so harmonious in her color choices. So they're both like really, they're getting there, man.
They are.
It's real sick.
One thing that is visible, though, is how much characters are always moving.
Yeah.
They're always in some kind of pose. They're very rarely do you catch one of Allred's characters just standing around doing nothing.
He never does that. Yeah, he never does that. The head is always on a swivel, always on a pivot, never a front view. There's so much great nonverbal stuff that happens throughout. We established that weird brain villain guy.
Right.
Kind of early.
Which is disgusting. That guy's head.
Yeah, well, let's make it more disgusting.
Ugh. Injecting himself in the tongue is so gross.
Yeah, especially those, I mean, that's like, he needs Valtrex for that tongue.
Some more of the fun, if you letter it yourself, you get to play around with some of the graphic elements of it. Even your word balloon, your coughing a little bit, like, let's show that visually. This
You're seeing a different Madman costume in every panel too, by the way. Different color approach.
This splash page makes me think of like the old Silver Age comics where you'd have multiple chapters in a comic.
Absolutely. And it's always the hyperbolic, almost exploitation type titling.
Yeah. Again, if you're doing the lettering, you get to play with that part.
This paper airplane stuff is real funny.
Yeah, it fits in, right? Because you'd see Madman with like a yo-yo. Paper airplane feels like it's right in line with that sensibility.
He's got that little disc gun that like we all had when we were kids. And I guess even he had it as a kid. It's an old invention. Doing trust falls, I feel like that's very 90s. I feel like the trust fall was invented in 1991. I remember seeing that shit on TV, and we had to do that stuff in school.
I have a trust fall in when Street Angel goes to juvie.
Yeah. It's so good. Dude, this background is
Beautiful.
Sick as hell.
Love it.
DeLuca effect.
Yep.
In effect.
For like a date scene.
It's beautiful, man. And then he's peppering in future story stuff. Having this little dude hiding back there. He gets all of his characters in here, man.
Yeah.
In those graphic musics and what were some of the other ones? Like, he has the G-Men from Hell, and they're even in here.
Yeah, it calls to mind some of the Flaming Carrot, Bob Burns stuff, like Mystery Men, equivalent of, say, a G-Men from Hell.
Yeah.
I thought this was really clever how he's having, like, the spaceship crash.
Right.
Like, just from a visual standpoint, you get to see some different marks in there. And even the leaves blowing off the tree, really good effect of something, whooshing by.
Solid.
Different shaped panels, like with the round panel.
Yeah, you call the classic Golden Age kind of panel, and this is really good because like he avoids tangent right there. That could have been very dicey. And here's your alien. It's a total like Lost in Space, zipper up the back kind of alien.
Yeah, dude in a rubber suit alien.
Exactly. Chekhov's paper airplane. Don't establish
Right
it
in the
earlier
eye.
if it doesn't pay off a little bit later. It's never, there's always going to be an adventure if there's a culvert in a comic book. And it looks so inviting.
This should be the pose, though, right before he ducks into that.
Yeah, sure. Sees a little bit of goop in that culvert, picks up an old jam jar, takes a couple samples, and once again, establishing the whole kind of universe of Allred characters, man. We got the Street Beatniks, pre-Mutant Street Beatniks, pre-Atomics. It's those same characters.
Yeah, a lot of
Mr.
parallels
Bum.
with that Atomics issue 1.
Yeah.
Even like the UFO coming in and stuff.
I really think that there's some like editorializing or parody of, especially if he's in the Pacific, the Allreds are living in the Pacific Northwest at this time, and seeing some of those kids, like when we go to Polish Hill, and you see some of that energy. You know what I'm saying then, and express your frustration on the page.
Cutting promos
on the page
on the locals.
Yeah. But I feel that, I could be projecting.
It's interesting. I've never heard that brought up in regards to his work because of his like Silver Age kind of influences. You know, having beatniks almost they could pass
Sure.
as part of that '50s culture.
Yeah, he's pushing it to an extreme that I feel like is totally like making fun of him.
You know what's great throughout this whole sequence, and I think that we don't do it enough now, is there's so much variety in terms of size of characters,
Mm-hmm.
compositions. Like a lot of this stuff, it just feels like there's all this energy on these pages
Yeah.
that I don't see in a lot of comics anymore.
Yeah, sure.
You know, it's almost like, oh, I got to have my perspective right.
Right.
You know, and it's almost like you figure that out, and now maybe we'll shoot this all from the same perspective. And I like this kind of energy of moving around, and even like doing like, think of the scales that you're seeing. Probably the biggest Madman on this spread, and then like the smallest one. That range is something to look for.
I mean, I see that in your comics. It's something
Something
that I
I
pay
value.
attention to. Yeah, I pay attention to that also.
But I look at this now and it just feels very adventurous. Like we are flying around this scene.
Oh yeah, tosses that goop on those mutants, man, and that's going to be paid forward.
Like this size of small panels where stuff's happening. You know, it's almost like a way to do a talking head or something where you have these smaller inset panels, but it really makes for a great looking page. And then the perspective of climbing up this rope ladder, amazing.
Absolutely, because it's there's no sure footing there. It feels like the wind's blowing. Feels awkward.
If you've ever climbed a rope ladder, that is what it does.
Absolutely.
Like that thing sideways when you're pulling on a handle or pushing hard off your leg.
Seeing these compositions, man, Jaime Hernandez comes to mind.
Yes.
And it makes me think that perhaps Allred wished that Jaime and crew stuck with the Rockets a little bit more than just the love part, because that's very close. And there's some tropes in homework, certainly the clear line.
This ship to me is totally Toth, Steve Rude vein of like ship design.
Yeah. And it's saucers, you know, it's spacemen, just classic movie type stuff. When I was a kid, like seeing this promoted in Wizard and places, they would always talk about pop art, and I had ideas of like what pop art was with Warhol and all that, and I'm like, I don't exactly understand what they mean. And I think it was like the submission guidelines for Fantagraphics when they were talking about 8-Ball and how they don't want genre in their comics, and they described 8-Ball as dissecting kitsch culture. Then I Googled that kitsch, or I look in a dictionary kitsch, and then I realized like, oh, all the junky stuff that like your parents didn't want you,
right.
You know, they wanted you to read Shakespeare or something, like all the junky stuff that was fun is in here. All these characters, like this creep character, you know, like I don't even know if he is in like later issues of this first Dark Horse run, or if it's like the later Dark Horse run where he's this big giant character and Madman's real small, but he's peppering in all this stuff that's going to be explored in future issues. Here's your G-Men from Hell guys. There was a movie.
Yeah.
Like one of the last times I went to a Hollywood Video, I think William Forsythe is one of them.
That sounds about right.
He's at least in there. Do you think Mike Allred was looking in the mirror?
Could be.
At these moments, like when he's posing out this character?
Good looking dude in his prime, right?
Yes, sir. In his prime, man.
Still kind of good.
Got a nice cut to his jib.
That's right.
Mike, join us. Let's do a shoot interview. Don't be shy.
It's so natural. Like holding that box feels so natural.
Yeah.
And I can't imagine that you would pose somebody to be like, hey, pick up this box. Let me see how this looks. But it looks so good.
Sure. Yeah, it's like I feel like he's like a master of the gesture. You know, doing that like 5-second proportional sketch to give you that life. He's even
twisted, like his upper body's bent away. So, you know, like if you put something heavy on one side of you, you would twist that way.
Yeah.
And he's got that going on.
Yeah. And always it's the proportions are always right. You know, like the shoulders aren't too narrow. Allowing some open space on his pages with these open panels. Frank Einstein, he's seeing visions.
Yeah, everybody's pretty cool for what he's walking around wearing.
Man, I would really like to talk to Laura Allred about this stuff, because we're seeing her like play around with a little bit of gradient and stuff. And this is a very, very pastel version of like her palette is not this pastel. And I wonder if this comes back from press and then she makes adjustments going forward. Like, it would almost be worth like, we're going to be doing more issues of this in the future, no doubt. But the color is certainly something I'm going to pay attention to.
Yeah, I would have some questions for her. Because her coloring's been good pretty much from the get-go.
Yeah.
But at this point, she has to be doing color guides, right?
Yeah,
like, I don't think she's doing a digital thing. So, like, gradients, and there's a couple of subtle gradients throughout this. So I wonder if that's being handled by someone else.
Yeah. Like this next page.
Right.
These little zapper gradients.
Yeah, there's quite a few of them, but they are subtle, so you're not overwhelmed. But, you know, if you look here, it's like gradient, 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 gradient,
Yeah.
gradient. So there's enough on there that it makes me think like somebody's doing the digital, like the color steps.
This is the one you talk about too, the purple into the orange with the gray in the middle.
You see it.
Yep, there it is right there.
Hard to make that work.
But you got to try it, you know? This is the early bleeding edge days. You try it. Does it work? Perhaps not.
You know what? It's great on that page, or yeah, on this following, because you can see like, oh, yellow to orange, no problem at all.
Yeah.
You know, it's that orange to purple where like you're running across the middle of the color wheel. Turns gray in the middle. There are a lot of colors though, like this turquoise color. That was a color we didn't see in the first, I don't know, 50 years of comic books.
Right. Yeah. Oh no, absolutely. Absolutely.
I like it whenever they get to that, like, oh, now we can use any color, but like, which colors do we want to add to our palette? And this is a pretty subtle, you know, experimentation in this one.
You mentioned Chris Ware as being an influence for that one page, and I'm wondering, like, this looks like that Midwestern color palette that Ware would employ in Acme Novelty. You know, the pastel hues, the kind of earth tones.
That's the thing.
These slate kind of colors.
Like in today's world, it's impossible to keep up with everything that's coming out. But if you're making comics, say, in the late 80s and into the early 90s, you could read everything that was interesting that was coming through the direct market.
Yeah.
You know, so like if you see something that looks like a Steve Rude reference, it's probably a Steve Rude reference, you know, or a Chris Ware reference. Like there wasn't a lot that was coming out. You could really keep up with all of that. And the stuff that was good, that was a short list.
That's true. Even the blue, like the cyan on Mad Men's kind of shadowed parts, it's like a 5% or like a 2% cyan. You almost don't see it.
Yeah, it works really well. It's a good mix. Man, I love whenever he's like running or doing something. It's so perfect. Like slamming this door. The stuff with weight and physics really feels right.
Yeah, yeah. This stuff, good facial expressions throughout.
Mm-hmm. He gets so much mileage out of those open eyes.
He really does. So they finally cracked into the spaceship that landed. They found their way in. But of course you got to have complication. You ever see there was that lecture that the guys from South Park gave, and it was about like, how did it go, man? It was like, if your story is this happened and this happened and this happened, like it gets dismissed. Everything is like but and therefore statements. We got into the spaceship, but we got zapped by this little eyeball gimmick. Therefore, we introduce Mott the Hoople, or excuse me, Mott from Hoople. With his hamburger face. Not a bad start, huh, Jimmy?
No, and look at him using every page.
Absolutely.
You're going to give me a #1 at Dark Horse. This is a nice high-profile gig. You're going to get your money's worth out of this issue.
I believe this is pencil work that will be showing up for the cover of the next issue with, I think,
Mitch O'Connell.
Mitch O'Connell over top of it, doing color, doing painting over top of it.
Yeah, I think that's right. I thought it said that somewhere, but I don't know where I read that. Maybe, next issue, Mitch O'Connell provides the back cover.
Yeah.
As well as collaborating on the front cover painting. And that's what I think you're seeing on that front cover.
Yes. Yes.
It's nice, though. It's a nice package. Having that much, Madman throughout the issue, very cool. You know, we look at so many of these different publishers' books, and I mean, Marvel DC, 10 pages of ads of unrelated stuff. It's nice to get an issue where it's just like nothing but the cover character.
Yes, absolutely. And listen, we don't need an exact origin. Maybe you touch it, but give me an adventure. Let me care about this character before we start getting into that, just the minutia of how they came to be. Starts off in a good place and stays strong throughout the duration.
Yeah, and tons of threads and characters.
Yeah.
You know, like where you're going to go with this. It reminds me of manga a little bit, where you look at the early installments and it's like, I'm going to lay down a bunch of pieces or throw a bunch of plates up in the air, and then it'll give me different directions to go. You kind of have that with this first issue. Like there's a ton of stuff introduced. If you're new to Madman, you know, there's a lot to go from here.
Good seams on the glove. Man, you good to go?
Yes.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. Jimmy, what's out there?
Hulk Grand Design, the oversized Treasury Collected Edition, will be in stores in December in time for Christmas, but you got to pre-order that now. It's a celebration of 60 years history of the Hulk. I'm writing, drawing, lettering it the Grand Design way, and that oversized book will be wrapped in fluorescent green and look great as a gift this holiday season. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Live from Image Comics. The second printing should be available in your local comic shop any day now if it's not there already, so pick that one up. And join me on patreon.com/JimRugg to see a lot more of my comics and art.
Red Room Trigger Warnings is nearly here. Collecting the 2022 season of Red Room Comics. There it is, man. You got to appreciate the spine of these things, man. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game in the Red Room Comics. Fits handsomely with the Antisocial Network trade paperback. And you can find these comics at your local comic shop if you're lucky. If not, go to my link tree in the description below this video. You'll be able to order and pre-order current and future Red Room comics at those links. And you could go to my Patreon, patreon.com/EdPiskor. I'm serializing the next round of Red Room comics, plus the $3 that you pay at the Patreon for that new stuff. You get all of the earlier Red Room comics in the archive. What else do we have out there, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise at the links below this video.
Another great way to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Given those marching orders will be on our way, Jim.
Read more comics.
Super fun. Another sip real quick. Optic Nerve, you good? Or you
yeah.
No,
Optic Nerve's good.
Let's do THB.
I'm good with whatever.
Yeah, I mean,
have a box of comics here.
You had it. Hit it, Jimmy. Welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Ed Piskor.
I'm Jim Rugg.
Jimmy and I are going to be doing some traveling in October 6th through 9th, CXE, Cartoon Crossroads, Columbus. We're going to have some tables there, talking comics with you guys. Can't wait to see you. Good comic literate town, Columbus, Ohio. Baltimore Comic Con, October 28th through 30th. That's the place where Jimmy and I cracked the idea of creating the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel in the first place. Great comic-centric Comic-Con that you guys will have a ball at if you're in the vicinity. And October 22nd, Jimmy's going to be at the Jacksonville Public Library for a zine festival, and he is the man of the hour there. So make sure you stop by and say hi, grab a comic, and check out Jimmy's talk on the dais. October is Kayfabe-tober, and these are your drawing prompts. One a day, man. Tag Cartoonist Kayfabe on Twitter, on Facebook, on Instagram with your drawings each of those days, and we're going to repost and reshare as many of those as possible. This is the official list for Kayfabe-tober, and these videos are brought to you by the comic books that we make. Jimmy currently has out on the racks right now Hulk Grand Design Monster and Madness. 2 issues of these will be compiled at the end of the year for the Hulk Grand Design Treasury Edition with this beautiful fluorescent green ink, oversized like the traditional Grand Design comics. And Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive collects all of Jimmy's Image Street Angel comics back in a new printing. So if you missed it that first round, you have no excuse. You got to go get your hands on this new printing. Red Room Trigger Warnings is going to be in stores within a couple of weeks as of this recording. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit. If you got the comic versions of Trigger Warnings, you still want that trade paperback because there's more than 60 pages of extra material in the back there, including commentary tracks, and it goes nicely with the Red Room Antisocial Network trade paperback from 2021. Without further ado, man, we did Batman Year 100 with Jim Mahfood, our brother from another mother, talking up some Paul Pope comics. It was only a matter of time, Jimmy, before we put THB under the microscope and crack this open in all of its glory.
This is such a strange comic. So I start to get into indie comics and stuff, I don't know, mid to late 90s. And there aren't that many out there, right? Alternative comics, at least the ones that I had access to, you could kind of count them in maybe two hands. THB was one of those books that just felt like alien.
Yes.
Like it felt like, obviously it's black and white, you know, it's self-published by Paul Pope, but you open it up and this is what you get is like the cartoonist in some kind of cool pose, and look at that background, what a photo. I wasn't seeing that in any of the Fantagraphics releases at the time or the Dark Horse books. This was like a totally different flavor of comics. Yeah, even the size of it feels like a magazine or something.
Yeah.
It was just an odd object. And again, you put in that it's self-published, and it really was like, I don't know what I'm looking at. I want more of it.
Yes, and in retrospect, it's we have some more language that we can express regarding this thing.
He's bringing in design stuff that wasn't present in most of the comics that I was looking at. You know, like maybe 8-Ball, you know, there were some guys who were good designers that were making comics, but by and large, like, I was not seeing anything like this.
No, I would say that, you know, upon this reread, cracking it off the shelf for so long, it's all of what became established in zine culture of the day, Fact Sheet 5 type energy, with these front pieces.
Well, combined with manga, like how much does this spread look like what we know of as like published in Japan manga, right?
Yeah.
Like big images, lots of kind of text and info, dense, and it's loaded with that stuff. So a lot of influences I wasn't used to. This stuff's a revolution what he's doing with a brush at this time. Like nobody was doing this in America with a brush.
He inspired a generation of cartoonists that came after it, man.
Absolutely.
I could name dozens of cartoonists who were like, oh, you don't have to use the Winsor Newton Series 7 number 2. Like, you could use the number 5 brush and get these super thick lines.
So here's some stuff to call out for everybody at home, because they probably heard of certainly Paul Pope. THB number 1, volume 2. A lot of this is kind of redone, rebuilt on the original THB number 1, which I don't have a copy of, but you can see this announcement, right? This is an amendment. I think there's about 40 pages that have been reworked in this edition. Since the original THB1 published in October 94, the end of the year 1994 is when the first issue came out. I think 4 or 5 issues have been published by the time this comes out a year later.
Sure. Yeah, you see him back here, like they're promoting all this stuff, and he's a wanted man at this point. Like Dark Horse has him doing serializations in Dark Horse Presents. He's doing work like this is imagery from his Kodansha stuff. What was that stuff called? Super.
I thought it was Smoke Navigator, but I don't think it is.
No, it's super something or other. But that's what this image is from. Even though
it looks Super Trouble?
Yeah, that's it.
That's a good title.
Yeah, it's great, and it feels Japanese.
Yeah.
But you know, he's being serialized in a comic that has a weekly distribution or monthly distribution of 1 million copies. So he's getting in front of a lot of eyeballs. And throughout the years, I mean, he did design work for Donna Karan. Like, he is a very sought-after illustrator, graphic designer.
It's really cool, too. Like, he would have essays in a lot of these self-published pieces, which, again, felt different than most of what I was reading. I mean, this isn't even like the editorial page in the back of Image. Like, this is kind of thoughtful stuff. Like, he talks about how all the coolest comics, as far as he could tell, were titles like Raw, Rubber Blanket, Drawn and Quarterly, Acme Novelty Library, all of which can claim some allegiance to the very solid and resonant history of graphic design, and goes on to talk about design as an influence.
Yeah.
And it's like, this stuff spoke to me. Like, I was finding this when I'm in school studying design and thinking of making my own comics, which meant I had to figure out covers, I had to figure out inside covers, all those pieces that you don't really think about when you're trying to just draw the comics. well, once you start self-publishing, you got to figure them out. And it was cool to hear somebody talking about that stuff.
I mean, this is proto blog.
Yeah.
You know, like this is a guy after Magan, Dave Meltzer dirt sheeting himself, getting himself over, giving you some insights into some personality that he leans into. You know, like he introduces you to him. Like on the inside cover, there's photos of him in every book, every issue. How many of these small THBs were out there? Like 6 issues? Like,
I think 5.
There's 5 issues and there's 6A and 6B. Is there anything after those?
Oh, yeah.
I know there's the big stuff.
Adhouse published 1 or 2 issues of his, and then he did another one in the early 2000s. It was 4 issues. That might be issue 6, where it's like A, B, C, D. And I mean, they're all big, meaty issues like this. You know, like it's probably between them 250 pages worth.
Right.
And then the 3 that you mentioned that were oversized. So like Buzz Buzz, THB Circus, which was, I think, square shaped. Yeah, so there's quite a bit. And some of the oversized stuff I'm glad you mentioned, because those were really some of the books that like changed my life.
Totally. Even this, like, I don't know about you. I discovered him through Palmer's Picks.
Uh-huh.
And immediately went to the comic shop and saw that, like, you know, it's like $5 or something. And I'm like, oh no. Yeah. That's my whole week's budget.
It's tough.
$5.50. But it is so chunky. And I literally had dreams about this. Like, just the thickness of it and stuff. I'm like, there's so much in here. And this is from one person. He's going to do it regularly. Had it put on my pull list. I missed it the first go around. I guess that's what I was getting at. Like, when you go to the comic shop, those first ones, they disappeared. Who knows if they even made it to Pittsburgh. But when these started coming out, man, I was on it.
You know, you look at this illustration, and again, no comic I own looked like that.
Mm-mm.
That was like something new and different, and that's what I was chasing. And you know what? Shout outs. You mentioned the comic shop. I got mine at Phantom of the Attic in Oakland, and not just this, but a bunch of the THB stuff, you know, that they had in their cool indie section. So the shout out to the local comic shops, you know, because I mean that's how you found this. I wasn't gonna. I don't know how you would have ordered it in 1995.
This stuff was had to be floating around the SVA, because I was just thinking about like all the people I thought that that are influenced by that thick brush, and I'm like, they went to SVA, she went to SVA, he went to SVA.
Yes. I'm with you. Yeah.
Yeah, so he redrew a bunch of stuff, and I don't know if that means he added pages or if he replaced pages. I do think we will see the smattering of the original pages in here. There's a lot of interesting approaches too, because
you know what? Go back one page, and we don't need to go through these details. But you mentioned about, you know, what's redrawn and stuff. He actually calls out. It's almost like a little director commentary of what's new. Says if he had time, he'd redraw the whole thing. Which isn't that every cartoonist would feel that way about an early work. But he does call out, like, you know, a new 7-page version of this, or a new 16-page story that replaced this or that. And I mean, this thing, at least 64 pages. You know, I don't know what the page count actually is, but it's a big book.
Yeah. I bet you it is the max amount that you can staple.
I love that it's saddle stitch.
Saddle stitch. That's what I was looking for.
That is what you would get, is like, this feels like it should be square bound based. I mean, they square bound 48-page books, and this is way more than 48 pages. I love that it's the staple.
Yeah. So we're going to see a bunch of different approaches, and I think that might be some clue into the newer pages and the vestigial pages from the original issue number 1. I would call these out as probably being pretty new compared to some of the other pages that we'll see in here. And I think to some extent it'll be pretty clear. We're establishing HR and her homie.
Yeah, and she's a school-age girl. We'll see her dad, you know, so like her family's here, her friends are here and stuff, but she's the star.
Slow burn in terms of the writing of it when it comes to, like, you know, we establish her character, and it seems like there's like a lot of pages just kind of exploring the character before THB is even, you know, in the mix.
Yeah, barely in this one, THB.
It's interesting also that when we finally do see him, it's not some epic splash page. This isn't really American style superhero type comics, you know, like you could imagine Kirby, that would be a whole splash page. If somebody, you know, it's possible that reveal could show up like on a page turn, but none of that.
Cool screen tone here, but look at the lettering. Mm-hmm. You know, we talk about lettering so much, like when you start seeing him letter his own stuff, wild.
No Ames guide.
No.
That's something that I was really digging. with this work, man. No Ames guide, and it retains the spirit of the line art. That's what we talk about so often, is like, if you're going to use a font that corresponds well with the actual visuals. And I mean, he's using the brush that he inks with to letter this stuff. I do think that the lettering on a lot of this is inked with a brush.
Yeah, there's a lot of tools on display, because there's one piece that I was looking at and I swore it's a ballpoint pen. So we're gonna see some different stuff too as we go through, as you mentioned, like what's new and what isn't. Look at the white media that he's putting on top of the screen tone.
Yeah, and could just be getting shipped off. You know, that's a portfolio piece that you send to Kodansha.
He talks a lot about manga and its influence. Talks a lot about European stuff.
It's clear.
Years later, like when he's working at Marvel DC, he starts talking about Kirby being a big influence, and that was something that really like opened my eyes, because when I look at these pages, I don't see a lot of Kirby, although there's a ton of energy of like characters running and movement. You know, so they're in hindsight, you can see some of it, but it's not the obvious stuff that I think a lot of people copied.
Cartooning 101, you got your brunette, you got your blonde.
Yes.
And they got to make their way in school. Love this little piece, man, where the full focal point, it's like she has a frickin' spotlight on her. Genius.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff, even creeping in there, you know, and the spotlight's even here because we've got screen tone on the doorway, but white where she's sticking her head into the spotlight.
The architecture stuff, it almost feels like plein air ink drawing or something. Like he's got an easel and he's like looking at an actual kind of Gothic structure and just going ham straight to ink. For
all the people who he influenced and copied him, nobody still draws architectural elements like this, you know, like there's perspective desks, straight line, what should be straight lines, and he's just whipping it out with giant brush strokes.
Yes, and you feel the
very
energy.
Organic ones.
Yeah, you feel the energy from it. Absolutely.
Yeah, the energy I think was the big giant takeaway for me with this stuff. I had not read much manga at this point, so that element was pretty new, and it just felt like this is a different kind of comic.
Yeah, one part that is rooted in more American style is word volume is much more than your average manga. When I see bits like this, I start to think like, man, maybe Rubber Blanket has some influence.
Definitely.
On his approach.
I see a ton of that.
Chunky Mazzucchelli lines.
And at this time, he's coming out of, I believe this is published out of Columbus, was his base of operations. Yeah. And I mention that because Columbus has such a rich brush ink history going back to Kniff. You know, I mean, you think Billy Ireland and Columbus, think Jeff Smith, you know, like there's just a long history of certain values that kind of exist outside of the New York cartooning community. Yeah. And Pope comes up in that, right?
Yep.
I mean, he's there for at least for, you know, a little bit of time.
So here's some indicator. If that original issue came out in 94, like he's signing this off, man, 1995. And you turn the page or you look on the next page, this looks earlier.
Looks different.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's a more controlled kind of lettering. It's a more controlled sort of ink line, thinner lines.
Much more restrained in how he's putting those ink lines down.
Perhaps drew it much bigger because it looks reduced down a lot. It's very wild, man. Like he introduces the THB, the concept of THB. He needs to go up a couple flights of stairs to go do some work, and he just has a damn crane bringing him up.
Yeah, HR's teacher.
Yeah.
Prepping her for some exams that are coming up. Oh, by the way, they're set on, this is on Mars.
Yes.
You know, bringing in these sci-fi elements that we're not dwelling on, but are part of the story, and you get little bits of it. As her dad is some kind of miner, I believe, and he's moving his robot factory outside of the part that's really ruled on Mars. So you have these Martian authorities that are at odds with her wealthy industrialist father.
This stuff is interesting. These pages.
This is totally, talk about getting into something different. Like, what exactly are we seeing here?
Yeah. And it's interesting. Like, you know, if comics is about like picture making for narrative value, the next second, like, so this panel happens and then this is like the next moment. This isn't a flashback. This isn't anything. It's still continuing the story. He's kind of like, fuck it kind of energy, but he's also the word bubbles and stuff are handled way differently. There's no bubble. There's just tails.
There's like wet on wet. Like sometimes you'll see the ink bleeding, but it's not just the wash. It's also putting like ink on top of water because you can see that bleed.
Yeah.
Unusual techniques, very strange. And then you get white gutters, which makes me wonder, like, how's he getting that? Is he cutting these panels out?
Or is it computer? Like, it was computer possible, scanning and stuff? Like, because you could trap and magic wand, you know what I mean, that space, and then slide possible. Something underneath. But
yeah, I'm
were
really
you doing
not
that in
sure.
1995? And this looks earlier, like, so this could be 94.
Yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if this were part of the original THB.
I think it is, and you'll see it oscillate. Like, we'll have it here, and then we'll see it.
This giant heavy black is just a wild line.
Yeah.
It reminds me of do you know? I think it's John Van Fleet. He had done a couple of comics, but had kind of a painterly approach, but would use this really heavy. It was almost a brown line, but it reminds me of like some of the marks that you see on these pages. This is very different. It's where your line crosses into almost a value piece, of the spotting blacks.
He'll also do a thing where he's using pencil to create depth. Will we see any of these pieces here? No, not yet. But he'll use pencil in those sequences to communicate depth. You'll see figures far off in the distance and stuff. And now we jump forward to what I would consider to be more modern artwork, some of the stuff that he drew to put in this issue specifically. Man, I really want to see a real issue number 1. And you know what? When we go to Columbus, I bet you we're going to be able to.
You know what? That's a good one to pull out. And I've been meaning to say too, like if anybody has recommendations, because we're going to have a little bit of access to the Billy Island, post comments on what we should be digging out of there if we can get some stuff for an episode or two.
True, but I'm sure
a THB one would
we
be a
got
good
some
one.
buds, man. I'm sure we got some buds that have these issues. See, here's some of the kind of stuff he's allowing his pencil work to be seen.
Yeah, you can really see it in the back of that chair. That's cool.
And you see his figure, so you see some underdrawing even. I'm wondering if he thought that would be visible in the final, because that was just underdrawing for the character.
It feels very experimental. The ability to do this kind of stuff where it's like a subtle gray difference, even in the word balloons, like very painterly.
Some of my lettering is off register.
Yeah, what could that possibly mean, since this is one color? Is that a separate layer, do you think? The black is like on a transparency? That's my guess, because that's how you create a shadow.
Yeah.
Otherwise, where are you getting an off-registration line on one color ink?
Yeah.
And it kind of feels that way where, you could even do your masking if you were going to do some sort of transparency layer on top.
Right. Here's that piece that I was talking about where he has these figures in pencil, and even some building structure in pencil, and it really creates that depth. It looks good on the monitor.
It feels manga-esque to me also, looking at this stuff and thinking of like maybe the first couple pages in a manga serial where you might have color or watercolor or something that's a little different.
Yeah.
Feels like you're approximating some of those ideas. Look at this kind of stuff for storytelling of like the arrows going through.
Love it. And I get the sense that that kind of thing can happen organically, because he does it here. He does it maybe one or two other spots, and he goes, oh, I need to do some more of that. Like, that just makes a lot of sense. You've never seen it before. Dude, it's a total colonoscopy, by the way.
Yeah, it really feels like experimentation in that section. Like a young self-publisher, because he had done Ballad of Dr. Richardson and Sin
Tutulo.
Yeah. So, he has self-published a little before this, and it feels like just figuring out like what prints and what does he want to do and what can he bring into these pages.
He's good and fast. I get the impression, because he's doing stuff for Negative Burn. Like, he's pumping out hundreds of pages in a very short amount of time.
These kind of map drawings is something that I associate with a lot of his work in THB and some of the Vertigo stuff that he does.
Yeah.
That felt pretty new. Wasn't seeing that in a lot of comics I was reading. And like this kind of drawing, wasn't seeing that in anything.
I've seen some originals of
maybe
his.
Mazzucchelli.
Yeah. And his originals are gigantic.
Right.
The ones that I've seen. And they're way bigger than a Zipatone would allow. So I'm wondering if he reduced his work and then applied his gray tones, because they don't make Zipatone sheets as big and wide if this is as big as the pages I've seen. You know what I'm saying?
I do. I know exactly what you're saying. And I don't know. I mean, he may have even been making his own. There were people that were doing that. So I don't know. Hard to tell. We've seen such weird Zipatone things, like we've seen Zipatone on regular paper pasted down on art. So,
yes, we have.
you know, certainly people figure out different ways to do it. Like this, to me, very graphic treatment. And I mean, there's almost no drawing there. It's just a very thick brush line.
You know, Frank Miller comes to mind sometimes, like not with the visuals of the work, but there's some association. There's a character that was mentioned, Shrek in here, Miss Shrek, Roberta Shrek even. So like I feel like Bob Shrek was in the vicinity.
He's working for Shrek at Dark Horse Presents at this time. Yeah.
So like these backgrounds, like you've seen him in Daredevil, you've seen him in Wolverine.
Yeah, and if Pope's reading a bunch of manga, he might be looking at the original sources of these kinds of backgrounds, right? The stuff that Miller's drawing from.
You know what's crazy to think about that I never kind of connected before, but thinking of manga and the expressive line and all that, Goseki Kojima has that brush that's like this like very adventurous line. And Pope is on the record. Like you could find that Criterion Collection, like this video on YouTube where it goes to like Ron Wimberly's studio. It goes to Pope's studio where you can see some of the sizes of his artwork talking about Lone Wolf and Cub. So maybe there's a little Goseki Kojima here.
It's nice that he's signing many of these pages.
Yeah, the new stuff.
It lets you know what is new, at least, you know, some of it.
Then you turn the page and you can tell this is older. You know, you can tell that this is older.
This is a great contrast too, because this is the business, like we had seen previously, this is the business, you know, her father and a businessman that he's doing business with.
Yeah.
Cool scenes, but now those same characters carry over. Her father, the businessman from that previous scene, but now HR is involved.
Right.
It's very fun rolling through this stuff.
And, dude, it ends on a high note, like finally going to drop some THB into this glass of water.
Good cliffhanger too, because we don't get it on the next page. No. We're going to wait for that payoff. He's like, you'll understand soon. He's trying to explain this concept before we actually see it.
These pages look the oldest.
You know what, go back one page. That Obey has to be a conscious nod to the street art.
Shepard Fairey.
Yeah, Shepard Fairey at the time, right? Mid-90s, about when he's starting to ramp up, I feel like, with that Obey stuff.
He was probably just called, I think it was called Giant back in those days even, man. So, like, that's possible. Why not?
It feels like that's about when he crosses my radar, and I'm sure Pope was ahead of, you know, me in terms of knowing what's going on everywhere.
Sure. But this is very old. Like, I feel like this is some of the earliest works, man. And these pages, when you see the 12 tier, you know, the 12 panel page, Hergé comes to mind.
Yeah, and also these are those, when you mention big oversized originals, you can imagine these things as being like 18 by 24 pages.
Doing the hatching and creating value with brush line. That's not pen. This looks all brush.
The GNG is a manga that gets in. This is like a government agency. These bug face characters are sort of like the rulers on Mars, and this is material that they're impounding.
Yeah. And as you can imagine, all government impounders do, enjoying the material themselves.
Each guy, yeah, this is like a little comic on the bureaucracy. Each level of bureaucracy is like, oh, did the new impounded stuff come in? Pass that up to my office. And it goes through about 4 layers in this little short strip as each guy that's the higher up in the chain of command is like, bring me that stuff. I'll take care of that.
It's the classic thing with the censors who raise fusses about, you know, desensitization and stuff. They read and view all of that material. Somehow they're not desensitized, but you might be.
Yes, yeah. Bring me the month's crop of illegal publishing. And now here we go.
You know, this might actually be older than that previous little setup.
Yes.
This looks super prototypical.
Absolutely. And you get the sense if it's a young cartoonist experimenting with what does this stuff look like.
Yeah.
So here's some pencil. Is that what you're seeing here? Graphite, pencil?
Yeah, absolutely.
Grease pencil, something.
Looks very gestural.
Man, this is wild stuff for mid-90s.
Total revolution. And you know, it's ballsy to, like, for cartoonists to let this be seen in a certain way, man. Certainly at this time, like, craft was prioritized a lot, and usually what that meant was the pristine look. Certainly in indie comics. Who were the guys in indie comics? All the guys he mentioned, you know, Clowes, Chris Ware, Burns.
Yeah, Miller's part of that was Sin City at this point.
Yeah. So
Yeah, it's
like
not a big list.
allowing this process stuff to be seen, it just was never done.
Right. What's amazing though is like you think you've got to show people something they haven't seen before.
Mm-hmm.
This is a guy that's really going for it as a young cartoonist in terms of like, I'm going to do something that doesn't look like anything else on the racks.
Yeah.
Bold, but I mean, that's what you want to do if you want to stand out. And finally,
Yeah.
finally the payoff.
But here it is, dude. And it's very, like, what's the word, man? He's not going over the top with it.
Right. He isn't. It's still kind of within HR's world, right? Like we're not going into a Kirby Marvel Universe style world. It's still within her world, but it's her friend who's been pestering her, like, let me see this thing, because her friend has this mech that she can bring out, which is kind of conceptually similar, but way not what THB is.
Right.
THB is your Kirby character put into this sci-fi world.
It's what's his name, Mr. Impossible, that little Fantastic Four dude.
Yeah. And it's part bodyguard, part servant kind of character.
And he's also a prankster of sorts.
Here's some of your pencil in the background.
How cool, right?
I dig it. Fun. It is fun to see like those outlines of characters and how he's building that background.
You know what's so interesting though is, and I would bet that like crack open the other issues, like we don't see so much of that probably.
Probably not.
But the people who were super influenced by they didn't take those lessons. They didn't take those bits into their practice.
Yeah, right. You know where I would see it is Pat McKeown does that backup in Weasel #1. And we look at it on a video of Weasel #1, so you guys can go seek that out if you want to. But he has those panels that are like part pencil, part ink. Pretty cool.
And we get to see some personality stuff between HR and THB.
Hey, check out the lettering too, because we have mentioned these different materials that we think it's lettered with. This feels like maybe a marker that he's
like
lettering with here.
And even this stuff feels same deal, you know, like maybe even a thinner, maybe even a rapidograph. It's a pretty dead line with this stuff over here. And he's, I mean, you know, young cartoonist, like why not try a little everything?
I should say too, THB is this like life form, but it's based on you hydrate it and then it comes to life and eventually the hydration goes away and it like poofs back into the little, like she wears it in a necklace.
Sponges.
Yeah.
Remember them shits? Little dinosaurs and stuff.
And back to the stark black and white now. Here we go.
Yeah, we got our bug dudes. They're coming to HR's crib, and I can't wait to show you guys this piano. Ain't that mean looking?
It's ridiculous.
You know,
so
with like
bizarre.
Sam Keith is teeth.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so animated looking.
It is.
And you just know it doesn't mean Will. This Buzz thing, like this is his not Laughing Spitting Man, but the Velvet Glove little face that gets tattooed. Like this is the Paul Pope version of that. You know, he's creating this little iconic Bosco, Max Fleischer looking character.
It's a big part of that world building, you know, having these kind of like advertising icons that are imprinted there.
Yeah.
It's a, you know, advertising design, like he mentions that as being an influence, and you can see it in elements like that, and the Japanese influence.
Yeah.
Feels like an advertising mascot that you might see there.
The structure of these pages feels very American, very sort of standard in terms of where indie comics were at this time. You know, 3 tiers, playing with the Kirby Ditko panel structure. The Bros do it, Clowes does it. So he really opens up his storytelling later. Much bigger, poppier images. This is animated so well. And the visual storytelling of this sequence, this batch of pages, is incredibly well done with this character. So the designy part just invites you to keep reading. It keeps pushing you to the next panel.
This character design, I think, is really strong too.
Yeah.
The weird mechs and robots and stuff.
Because he has that organic line with these weird robots.
We talk a lot about like the back 3/4 view.
Yeah.
He does this view several times and it's so good. Just of that character, any character, but a character staring off, you know, like off into the distance.
You know, like when you speak about the Japanese influence, he has his own version of eyes, but it does have that manga vibe a little bit sometimes.
The way he draws HR's face throughout this issue impresses me because there's not a lot of marks, and it's kind of unusual, you know, like it's not like he's doing ovals for eyes or something. He's drawing an underlash and an eyelash and pupils and irises and all these different pieces. It never looks busy or cluttered, but it reads like there are times when I'm like, is he drawing from somebody for this face? And it's little faces. It's not like it's photorealistic, studied, modeled face, but it just has an accuracy that's you don't often see in this kind of drawing.
Yeah. It doesn't get lost in the background. You know, he's strong from the start.
This mech too is very menacing.
Yes.
The way it's presented is just awful. It feels like a monster. And there is a tiny bit of Kirby in that face design.
1,000%. The cartooning of it, the chase is great under tables.
Yeah.
And like that's hard to
definitely
choreograph, man. And he does it very well. Calls back to earlier lessons from her schooling in the first part of this issue, where
logic training,
trying to do the prisoner, versus the computer. How did that go again?
It's a great episode.
Yeah. What did he tell the computer?
WHY ?
Yeah.
It smokes.
Yes, it does.
We are seeing a version of that here. This is great, man. She trips it down the stairs and then launches this rug, piece of sculpture or something at its head.
Sells the heaviness of it. The rug pull looks good. And she laughs about it, man.
You're right about the chase stuff, though. It's very effective. It's a chance for him to show off that kind of motion and running through the space. And she drops her THB into this like drain in the bathroom.
You got to do it. You know, if you have this like Deus Ex Machina weapon, you got to lose it. You know, it definitely makes you want to see what happens in issue 2.
It's so inventive. Like she's looking through the keyhole and sees this monster. She's tipping over the the shelf of books onto the monster. Everything you can imagine if you were really putting together a chase scene through this place where her rich father lives. They're using props.
Yes.
It's great stuff. And finally she outsmarts this thing.
They dispatch it and they say something about like, you know, like, is there something, like there's something else. Like I heard something, but I don't know. They got in here with that guy. Could they have gotten in here with something else? Last image you see is that fucking menacing piano with that mean face. And by the way, like drawing a piano once, that's a motherfucker. Now you got a villain piano. Paul Pope ain't giving himself an easy job.
I was going to say, man, when somebody sends me a script with like the animated evil piano, I'm out.
And he chooses this. Look at all this THB material, and I think a lot of it we don't see. You know, I don't think there's a THB 7. I don't think there are trade paperbacks that are like 300 pages a piece. I don't think that exists.
None of this stuff comes out.
Yeah, this THB A and B. I don't think that happens. 340 pager.
We've been waiting for those collections forever.
And a 240 pager, like, please, man, I would love to have that stuff. And then these like late pieces, like these, you could tell that these are like new pieces of artwork and where he's evolving to, and you could see how, you know, Shelley Bond sees this and is like, come work for us.
Yeah, the shocking part is that everybody doesn't see it, right?
But a lot of people do. You know, like he laid it out. He's doing stuff for Caliber, Dark Horse, Kodansha. You know, he's doing Criterion stuff. Like he becomes a sought after guy. And I don't know, like this looks labor intensive to me, but I think he's fast. You know, I have nothing to base it on other than like these kinetic looking lines and the amount of work that he's done in a career. But I think he's kind of quick. Yeah.
I'm glad to finally get some THB on here because like there's a world of his comics that I want to look at. And, you know, like figuring out how to get into it is hard because it is so many books and pages and everything and pieces of it all over the place. So I'm interested to see how people respond to it. Yeah. And hopefully it opens the door to looking at more of this stuff, because it's remarkable to me to see the timeline and think like, if you just look at what he put out as Horse Press,
Right.
it's a couple of years, and it's probably close to 500 pages.
Yep.
And some really ambitious pages in that time frame.
Pretty cool, very inspiring, and happy to look at this.
Look at this stuff.
Going Dave McKean.
Yeah, right.
It's that 90s that 90s aesthetic that Dave McKean kind of established. You know, this is a book of its time. Ska influence.
Absolutely.
And you know, that's DC Silver Age up
Right.
top there. There's a lot of stuff at play.
Not bad to get a Will Eisner quote on your book.
Now, I don't know if like all the stuff I have is like a volume 2, like
I don't think there is other volume 2. I think this is it.
Okay, cool. So I have OGs of the original of the others, and there's always quotes from big namers, man. Like
he got hooked up with that Spirits of Independence tour, you know, the mid '90s with the Bessettes and Jeff Smith and Dave Sim and all those guys. So, you know, think of the stuff that he's taken from all of these guys who have a decade or two more time in comics than him at this point.
It's Double Truth Ruth, man, you good to go?
I am.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. Jimmy, what do you have out there, man?
Hulk Grand Design, the oversized Treasury Edition, will be in stores in December, collecting both of my oversized issues, and along with about 40 extra pages. Fluorescent green cover, you're going to want to put that book on your shelves. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive from Image Comics. New printing is out any day now. If it's not already in stores, you can pick that up soon. And you can join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see a lot more of my comics, and you can download some of my out-of-print zines and mini comics there.
Red Room trigger warnings, trade paperback in stores within the next couple of weeks. As of this recording, Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game in Red Room Comics. If you got the issues this year, want to grab that trade paperback for the 60-plus extra pages of material in the back, lots of extra artwork to buttress all the stories and things. Also a good companion piece to go along with your Antisocial Network trade paperback. Get it at my link tree in the description below this video. I made it super easy for you to get your hands on it. And if you hit up my Patreon for $3, you get the archive, which is all of this material. Plus, I'm serializing the next round of Red Room Comics there as we speak. New strips every Tuesday, and just $3 for that. What else do we have out there, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise at the links below this video.
Another great way to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Jimmy, given those marching orders, we'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
Boom. There it is. So I have one more to do. Like, I'll record Optic Nerve, but I don't have confidence that my phone's going to hold steady. So, like, let's do a round of your records. We'll trade seats, all that good stuff. I'm going to plug in my phone real quick. It was a fun week of comic reading here, dude. And I've been a comics reading mother effer for the past couple months, man, and just absorb it so much. Like, I sat with that World Encyclopedia thing for a whole like a day and a half. What you want to start with, Jimmy? And you know, you chose those comics, so you better express some opinions, man. Because you can't make me the bad guy all the time, dude.
Start with that manga.
This is cool. when you went to Nakano Broadway, like, did you notice like there would be these movie posters and stuff like they would all be this kind of shit?
I don't remember that standing out, but man, that was so overwhelming.
Yeah.
That whole thing. I'm gonna lock those in.
Yes, sir. Boom. Boom. Want me to hand you?
Yeah, you can hold on to that.
Cool. I guess you want to start, like,
oh, yeah.
So you know what your video is? If you're good to go, I'm good to go.
Yeah, go ahead. Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
A couple of news items off the top. We are going to be on tour in October. Columbus, Ohio, October 6th through the 9th at CXC. By the way, leave some comments below if there's something you'd like to see us pull out of the Billy Ireland for a possible episode or a closer look. We'll be at Baltimore Comic-Con the end of the month, October 20th to the 30th. The home show where Cartoonist Kayfabe was conceived, and you can catch me in Jacksonville at their public library for a comic and zine fest on Saturday, October 22nd. October is coming up quick, so the 2022 official Cartoonist Kayfabe-tober drawing prompts. We are putting this list together. We will be sharing this on our social media, and we will be sharing your drawings on social media. Tag us if you follow this list whenever this begins in October. Should be a lot of fun seeing some of those prompts come to life. And we are also working Cartoonist. And the way we get paid is you buy our books. So Red Room Trigger Warnings, the second season of Ed Piscor's splatterpunk masterpiece Red Room, available in stores in September. You can see it's a real book, man. Here it is. Yeah. Collecting that second season looks great on your shelf next to the Antisocial Network. Pick that up wherever you find books. Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Live, back in print from Image Comics. All of my Street Angel comics from Image, plus a few that weren't published by Image, are in this collection. Perfect place to start with my comics. And Hulk Grand Design Monster Madness, 2 oversized issue telling the history of the Incredible Hulk, available now wherever comic books are sold, and available for pre-order as an oversized Treasury edition that'll be out in December. So pick that up wherever you get comics. And now, Bat Manga. Do you remember this coming out, Ed? This is a 2008, I believe, publication. Chip Kidd's name is kind of the biggest name on this cover. Longtime Batman fan, collector, very well known for that. And basically, as he's collecting kind of like a lot of the Japanese toys and Batman paraphernalia that comes out, he comes across word that Jiro Kuwata was the manga artist that did a Batman manga. And according to Chip Kidd, this is kind of news to him in the late 90s, early 2000s. I think David Mazzucchelli had told him rumors about this, but he had never really seen the manga. And he starts to go on a rabbit hunt trying to find this stuff. And sure enough, there's a big run of it. I believe there are 2 volumes of Bat manga that have been published since then, collecting all of this stuff. But it puts me in mind of something like a Fletcher Hanks comic, where you hear about this thing, you kind of maybe dream about it if you're a Batman collector, and once he starts getting it, you know, you find more and more of it. The interesting thing is, once he gets a few of these Bat manga pieces together, sends a proposal to Paul Levitz at DC Comics. Paul's like, what is this stuff? And signs off quickly like, yes, please do this. And so Chip Kidd puts together this book showcasing the Batman comics that were created off of the popularity of the 60s Batman TV show. And these things were not direct adaptations of, you know, American Batman scripts. This was a mangaka given some source material and set free to adapt this stuff. So Chip Kidd is designing this book, and part of the appeal, part of the reason I wanted to show it off was to kind of show off all of this ephemera that he puts together, in addition to the comics, which we will see in here also. But some of this extra stuff is so cool.
We bumped into Chip Kidd at the Billy Ireland last time we were out there, probably. And it was random. Like, we were out there doing our own thing, and just Chip Kidd pops in. The people we were with, everybody's like, that's Chip Kidd. Oh, too scared to go up to him. I went right up to the dude. I'm like, yo, Chip, what are you trying to look at here, man? 250,000 piece of artwork in this joint? Like, what are you looking at? And he goes, I don't know, random Batman stuff.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
he's not playing, like he's into this thing. It's so cool seeing, like, this cartoonist is the creator of Ape Man, who's kind of looks like a superhero-ish
Right.
kind of character off the bat. And it's really cool to see a mangaka filter superhero comics through that idiom.
Absolutely. There's some really nice production notes on here too, and we'll get into those as we're looking at the comics, some of those notes on it. And the introduction is basically what I said. It's gives us some background on how Chip Kidd found this material, and tracking it down from this is an idea that exists to I need to see some of this Bat manga. And so that's what you get a little bit more context here from 2008, including an interview here with the mangaka, Jiro Kuwata, in the beginning. There's not a lot of revealing info here, but it's pretty cool that he was able to track down the original cartoonist and actually get him to talk a little bit about this experience and how he worked on the series, which, like I said, they gave him a pile of comics, and then he kind of like took those comics and thought, what will work in Japanese comics?
Jimmy, keep filibustering, man. I'm going to go grab a couple of things.
All right. Tezuka being a big influence on Kuwata, by the way, it comes up in the intro as well as in that interview. And some of this extra material is again, part of what makes this book so special. I think some of the collections, the other Bat manga collections, are actually smaller, more manga-like digest sizes and more straightforward, what we think of as like manga comics, one-color reproductions, cleaned up line art. Perfect. Is exactly what I'm talking about, Ed. It's like you read my mind. And you can see, black and white, a much more standard approach to manga reproduction is what you're seeing with these, and also a lot more reprinted. One of the kind of weird parts of this original Bat manga printing is there'll be like part 2 of a storyline or part 3, and a lot of incomplete pieces, which again reminds me kind of the Fletcher Hanks comics, where it was like, this is what we could find, so this is what we're printing, and then more surfaces as interest in this increases, which I often think is something that happens with cartoonist Kayfabe, where if I'm looking for a book, we maybe won't cover it till we track it down.
Yeah, which, by the way, dude, this is an Ollie's purchase.
Oh, nice.
That was remaindered $3 for this.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's kind of wild how
I'm sorry
works.
I knocked you off your hustle.
Well, no, the other thing is, like, whenever I finally can't find a book, sometimes we'll cover it because it shakes out more copies. Yeah. So I do think these conversations are useful in that regard. It might make a few things disappear, kayfabe effect, but it also, if the thing's obscure enough, may produce a few more. So one of the nice process pieces that he does is translate some of the Japanese on these sidebars. And a lot of the comics even have that stuff in the pages. There's so many of these, like, just beautiful images, like you were talking about at Nakano Broadway.
Yeah.
Of like these movie poster style images. Gorgeous images, right?
And just so clear that they have access to the Burt Ward Adam West TV show and stuff, because like you just have never seen an image like this in the American comics at all.
It's amazing to see like that Batman TV show version of Batman, but shooting missiles out of his bike.
It's not far from those like Guyanan movie posters.
Yeah, exactly. Pretty intense stuff too, like the Batman stuff underwater.
By way of Virgil Finley or
Super
something.
Awesome looking. But here we go, like actually getting into some of the manga now. And, Jeff Spears is the photographer who works with Chip Kidd on a lot of this stuff. Clearly the aesthetic that Kidd likes is actually photographing these pages as opposed to, say, scanning it. So you get the very pulpy, low quality paper that these were originally printed on. But here's where your translations run. So you can see like there's some Japanese running into the gutters and stuff in the margins. And that's what he's translating. And it's weird stuff like star trivia. Some of it not at all related to Batman. He also talks about replacing the lettering, and rather than doing like a hand lettering, which he usually prefers, setting it in this type. And I see a lot of manga that's set in this kind of, like a typeface that is, there's no pretend that this is hand lettering or trying to match a hand lettering. Like this is just a straight up sans serif font.
Oh yeah.
In this case, Gotham. So very appropriate. And this first storyline features Clayface. So it's kind of cool because some of these do not feature Batman's rogues gallery.
They create fucking way cooler villains.
But it's neat to see the ones that do. And also like seeing how scrappy what they were shooting from is. Like these are beat up pages.
Just desiccated. Like those same pages might not be here anymore.
And you can see, like, this stuff feels on model, like the Batmobile totally out of the 60s TV show.
Jerry Lawler owns that, by the way.
Yeah, of course he does. I was reading some of these this week, which was pretty fun. And it made me think about just the different ways we build pages.
Yeah.
Because this stuff is it's very simple in that there's not a lot of background distraction. Whatever's happening, like, you can read through these sequences pretty quickly.
Yeah. Total, it's the manga idiom, like I said, dude. And it's about seeing a story unfold rather than just the minutia of their day to day.
This is again the Clayface story. I think there's a couple of parts in here of this story, and in this, Clayface is able to transform into other shapes. He's a shapeshifter character, so a little bit different, I think, than the traditional Clayface that we see in Batman comics here. But it's pretty fun whenever he's just the glob of clay and he's like talking and stuff.
Yeah, every now and then you get that real money shot. This is that kind of manga, too, that, like, in some ways, with another assistant or two, yeah, I can see you churning one of these out every 2 weeks. Like, an episode every 2 weeks.
Yeah, and I find no fault with that. Like, it's, these are kind of silly comics. So how much do you really need to spend more time on a background for something like this? Like, they're entertaining. There's some really cool visuals as we go through. You'll see, like, even Clayface turning into a dinosaur monster, kind of fun. But there's some deluxe stuff that we'll get to of, like, 2-page spreads that look good. So I don't think anything is sacrificed in this style of drawing.
No.
From a reading entertainment standpoint, I don't think we're missing out on anything. But it does contribute to sort of the fetishization of print in my world. Like, that's part of what attracted me to this edition versus, say, the cleaner black and white kind of Bat manga editions that are also available. I like seeing this kind of stuff. I like seeing some of the different approaches to printing. And even within, like, the same story, you'll see this stuff where it looks like there's a second color or something added. It's very peculiar because it's not consistent. Even the page before doesn't have that treatment.
Yeah.
So,
maybe that's, signatures.
Yeah, it's got to be, I assume it's got to be something like that, but you can also see, like, how much the color of the ink fluctuates from story to story, issue to issue. Makes for a beautiful book, I think. And I think that's part of what I like about a lot of the way Chip Kid shoots these comics. And it must be part of the aesthetic that he enjoys, because there are different ways to do this, absolutely. And, he's a master of design. Like, he's not doing this unless it's the way he wants it to look.
Yeah, for sure. I feel like this is, like, one of the...
Love seeing, like, when you get color,
like
your covers or chapter breaks.
This is one of the early books that really magnified comics like this and like, use this approach.
Yeah, and it fits into that, like, outsider... These are good Batman comics. There's nothing wrong with the Batman characterization in these, but so atypical of a 2008 Batman.
Oh, absolutely. Like, the Chip Kid books, it's like New Yorkers' appreciation of comics or something. Like, you could just, this is like sitting on the coffee table of, like, bougie Manhattanites or something.
Yeah, it feels like an art book. Like an element that he's bringing to... on top of these comics and creating this context. It's certainly been an influence on the way I think about this stuff, because it's presentation.
Oh, totally.
This could just be black and white, very cleaned up line art.
Even that belly band on the back cover, like take a look, dude. It's Batman on the actual cover, or hold up, where was it? Is it on the front? But there's Robin is on the belly band.
The thing that's so fun about this.
I said look on the back, and you looked at the front.
People always, I feel like this is the thing that he would get criticized for. Because he was doing the Buddha Tezuka books at the time. They had the belly bands. I heard so many retailers complain about these belly bands, and you can see why. Yeah. Like, there's no way to keep them in mint condition. They look really cool, but they're terrible for the poor retailers who have to unpack boxes that are being shipped with this stuff.
Yeah.
But man, the 2-color stuff looks really good. And this is Lord Deathman, which I don't believe is part of the Batman's gallery.
One of the raddest, man.
But very cool looking. Yeah, like, look at that. And whenever he shows up, like, we go from these kind of pulpy 1-color pages to, that's a 2-color page.
Yeah.
What's the order here? It's so weird. Like, this says page 7, page 8. So very bizarre, like, how these are laid out. But man, it looks great. It's striking designs for these characters.
Archie Goodwin.
Oh. Somehow I don't know if that's true or not. But even here it's going like page 11 to 12 where we're getting a second color added. Pretty weird.
Yeah.
I wonder if that second color was always an option, and it just was based on, does the cartoonist have time to add it? Because like we're getting it consistently in this particular chapter.
It can be the magazine that it appeared into had that ability.
But it's a great looking Batman. I really like the art. And in that interview in the beginning, the mangaka was talking about originally he was going to try to draw it like an American Batman comic.
Yeah.
And realized like deadlines just wouldn't allow that.
That's the thing I was
but
really
it's not
trying to
that
crack.
far off. It looks like it looks kind of like the 30s the 1930 Batman.
Yeah. I just don't know, like what are we doing that's so much more labor intensive? Because like their stuff looks tough. That doesn't look easy to do.
It doesn't. It does make you wonder, like, can you do 80 pages of this in a month? And if you could do something that approximates this, why aren't we?
Exactly.
Because I don't think you're losing that much. Like doing, I don't know, intense, time-consuming perspective or elaborate backgrounds. Are you really getting much from a story standpoint? Sometimes this Batman gets a little bit out of character.
Frederick Wortham was right.
Yeah, they went on vacation, but it didn't work because they're listening to the radio, and it turns out the guy's still alive. Military trivia running down the gutters.
Oh yeah, like is it Japanese military trivia?
Yeah, of course.
Because I saw some tin toys and stuff in the front pieces there, and when I was around Nakano Broadway Mall, man, like digging up toys and things, dudes were showing me that there was like this period of toy where it had stamped into it, made in occupied Japan, almost like as like an insult. Right. Like, listen, we won the war, you were bad boys, so you have to stamp that. You have to like humble yourself and stamp this on all of your tin toys for like a couple years.
Lord Death keeps dying and coming back, and every time they think they kill him, he comes back. You know, it's a pretty fun character. I'm surprised that's not something that DC would have been like, yeah, let's bring that in.
You know how this is like so off model with ordered colors and stuff? The Ben Cooper costumes would allow for weirdness like that.
This feels made up. The very intro story about this is the Chip Kid bought this Japanese Batmobile that had like a Batman, like a weird Batman figure in it. And as soon as he won the auction, which he says was competitive, he gets the message from the other guy who turned him on to the Bat manga and was like, that's a bootleg toy. Somebody just jammed that figure in that toy. It's a great cover. It's a striking image. Almost worth, like that feels almost like a DC cover. And it would make sense if he's looking at DC Comics as a starting point, that he might steal some of the design kind of elements and compositions.
Feels straight from the Golden Age.
Yes. Yeah, totally. It's a good fit. There's so much like, the Hulk manga has not been translated.
Right.
And I swear that has legs. Like, think of all the ups and downs that the Hulk's experienced, because it was done in the early 70s before even the TV show.
Oh, wow.
So at some point, like, isn't Hulk popular enough that you'd maybe have, be able to sell that book?
Yeah, and of course, there's the Ryuichi Ikegami Spider-Man comics. We looked at some of that on the channel, and that did get some licensed Marvel publishing.
This stuff was also very informative to me whenever I'm doing like Aphrodisiac or any kind of retro color.
Did you scan some of this?
Whenever you see that, I didn't have this then, but I had looked at it. But you see like the beat up, like the texture of the paper coming through the ink, and it was like, oh yeah, how do you do that?
Well, let me ask you this, Jimmy, because I remember you did some work for some sort of French fashion alcohol, so, like some weird like, and it has a manga page. Like, what did you use for that? Just a random manga and scanned it in, or
I would do my own stuff. Like I'd scan in newsprint or something that had a texture, and I would extract texture from different samples that I would scan. So like I would look at this kind of thing, and then it'd be like, how do I create noise on the page or uneven ink on the page? So I was building most of that stuff just through layers, rather than like, scan this and then get a big solid piece of ink that has the texture already in it. Although that said, I was also scanning treasury editions and pulling out like if there was a big solid black area, because the newsprint American comics would have the same effect. Look, this is one of those pieces that I wanted to show off. They're surrounded by bad guys. So the deal is take the wheel, Robin, drive in circles, creating a centrifugal force. And so Batman's spinning around, like knocking these guys out, and you get a 2-page spread of that. That's a badass illustration.
Yeah.
It's really cool looking. I feel like that's that guy really, I don't know, man, either incorporating some stuff from American comics or just being very inventive.
And you got to have the onomatopoeia. Like, it's never been at home more than in a Bat manga.
Yes. Yeah. Kid talks about that in the beginning too, how they didn't change any of the sound effects. even though like that might have made perfect sense to have your pals and smashes and stuff like the TV show.
I mean, it's a Japanese comic, so like keep the Japanese stuff.
Look at this, all has to be Japanese Batman stuff, right?
I mean, look at the characters, like, of course.
I wonder how much of this is Chip Kid's collection and how much it is the other guy who contacted him after the eBay auction and was like, hey, let's track these down.
Wow, this is like a Barefoot Jen approach to the sweltering summer heat.
Isn't that a beautiful page? Even like the reflections in the pool, I feel like are just stunning.
This is so awesome. And this is her idea of like Wayne Manor.
You know what's funny? If I just showed you that and said, hey, check out this Chris Ware comic.
Absolutely.
That's a Chris Ware drawing.
Absolutely.
Of buildings.
Yeah, so pristine.
It's weird that kind of common language exists. You know, this is a guy in Japan in the 60s, Chris Ware, a guy in Chicago in the 90s, and yet they're able to like pretty much speak the same visual language on this stuff. Really good helicopter designs. But then to go from like this page to this, presumably the same publication that he's getting these pictures out of. That could almost be your Riddler.
Yeah, it's Riddler for the 90s, man.
I wish that the inks varied a little bit more than just like the purples and blues.
Sure, yeah. This is nearly the Tatsumi approach to cartooning, like those Black Winter or
yes.
Black Summer, whatever that fuck, like that kind of energy, rental manga speed.
Yeah, the cartoonist, you know, like he talks about that stuff, like he was coming up then. You know, he would have been like when Tezuka shows up, like I think he may have already started professionally at that time. So definitely an influence, but also maybe a peer of his. Published whenever he was in school still. Like he was making his own comics in middle school and showing them off to like his classmates, and found out that somebody had gone to a publisher like that, you know, like a kid, and the publisher gave him some tips on how to get better. So he's like, I'll take my stuff there and I'll get better. And the publisher bought his stuff on the spot. So he becomes a pro.
That's amazing.
Look at these. The motion stuff works really well with the superhero comics. Does it surprise you when you see something like this, that like superheroes weren't a big genre?
It does, especially with Toku Sensei and like all the Power Rangers, like all that kind of stuff.
Because it seems like the language is all there. Like it lends itself very well to this kind of dynamic storytelling. That's really great. Good motion. So pretty awesome. And I remember this book being popular at the time. I bought this used not too long ago.
It's at every library.
Looking at a lot of it.
You know, go to any good library, and this is on the shelves.
In the intro, Kid talks about, you know, it's like two genres, right? Manga and Batman that are joining forces. It does feel like the formula. If AI was making comics now, this feels like that could be a formula that the computer would come up with. And then this kind of stuff I love, where like imagine this is probably 1.5 inches in print, but you blow it up to your 8.5 by 11 here, full size. This stuff was really just a big influence on me overall for everything, for design. Playing with scale on these different images. And I wonder if that's a chapter head inside a book. Not the cover, but you know, like the two colors that would be inside. Texture and everything looks the same too. Feels like what you would read about in like manga when they describe the original phone books, and it's like the crappiest wood pulp paper that would just get recycled.
Yeah, you feel it there.
Yeah, I mean, it's wow.
Like this.
The amount of texture on that page.
It's amazing.
Comes through.
Yeah, it's amazing that any of that stuff survived.
It is. And you think about like how much of this stuff is lost. You know, I was thinking about newspaper clippings and things that are just gone. You know, like history of if you really need a newspaper, you may be out of luck on finding an actual copy of it. Which is sad. I've been going down old wrestling rabbit holes, and it's like some of those wrestlers in the early 20th century might have even made front page news, some of the big matches. Good luck finding one of those newspapers for a piece of reference.
Uncle Jim Cornette has it, though.
That's right. I'm going to have to start calling on him for some reference materials. And this just never ends. That's why I think like it's got to be more than Chip Kid's collection, right?
You know, it's so great, too, that he's breaking up storylines with this extra imagery, because what happens when you have like an artist edition, you have 200 pages of sort of the same stuff. There's like a cruise control that happens, and cutting these at the chapter and showing off a little bit of extra stuff, some photographs of toys, whatever, it knocks you out of that page turn.
Yeah, for a book designer, this is a really good book for that reason. This story, Professor Gorilla, It feels like this is Golden Age DC, right?
Full Mort Weisinger, Julie Schwartz era shit.
I was going to say Julie Schwartz would approve. Even in a costume. That's amazing.
Yeah, that's sick.
It's basically something happened to this gorilla that he got the professor's brain.
Of course.
Of course.
Yeah, that's like, Atlas Marvel.
I like that the idea is you have to adapt some of those DC Batman stories so that they make sense to your Japanese audience. And this is what the adaptation looks like. This is right out of a DC comic.
Yeah, but you don't ever see the gorilla.
No, it's true. Although maybe in part 3. This one started with part 2. So we might see him unmasked.
I mean, if you're going to call him gorilla.
Look at how much range, though. Like, totally purple ink, and then your 2-color, like your brown and gray and black, orange and black ink.
Yeah.
It's just bizarre. Like, if this is all from the same issue that he's photographing, the range and, like, the quality of printing, like, to go from this to this and possibly the same issue.
It's funny, where I'm sitting, I see a face right there.
And also elements like this do feel right out of the TV show. So I don't know what kind of access they had to that. But I mean, this is the building style of that TV show opening animation credits.
Yeah, when we saw several, like, rappelling or climbing up the side of buildings on the rope.
Yeah, it fits perfectly within, like, most of the Batman aesthetic I experienced up until probably Tim Burton's movie.
Sure.
And then at that point, it's like all bets are off and just everything goes. But so much of this stuff feels like classic comic tropes. So,
and we're getting into that space.
We do get to see the gorilla unmasked.
Yeah, there it is, dude. The reveal. Straight up Donkey Kong looking motherfucker, man. But
monkey's big everywhere, right? Japan and the US.
Like, I wonder, sometimes this work looks more raw, like more like earlier, but it's later in the book. So I don't know that these are in any kind of chronological order.
Yeah, I don't remember reading anything about that. And because they're at, like, part 3 and just randomly kind of put in here, you could be 100% correct on that. Like, these are like references to some of the TV characters. You can see likeness references. Yeah. This is kind of neat. You have, like, your doctored up cover and then, like, the advertisement line art version of it.
That's fun. Dude, elongated, man. So it's like, this is Detective Comics. But why you got red teeth? It's almost inked Silver Agey.
Yeah, it is.
Kind of
fun to see, mangaka doing that kind of inking style. Like, even the legs and stuff, that shadow is totally a thing I learned early on.
It's no mistake, the red teeth. What the fuck, man? You can't do it 2 times.
Yeah, you think that's not teeth. It's just an open mouth, right? It's got to be. I mean, if you're doing teeth, you're not going to do red.
Maybe he's got a mouthpiece. Like a pugilist. Look, they both have it.
Weird. You know what? It's textured. It almost looks like some little kid colored it. That's a great illustration.
Oh, that's sick as hell, yeah.
Wow. No idea what this would have come out of.
Dude, we got a name.
M. Roundhill.
So that's American,
Yeah, Roundhill is doesn't sound Japanese. That's pretty great. The Man Who Quit Being Human. I think this is the last big story in this collection.
I think that might be the first in this one.
And it's a guy who becomes like a mutant. Ends up getting exposed to radiation, and then it's kind of like, well, let's go all the way. And gives Batman a gun and says, if I come out of this and I'm something's wrong with me, destroy me. And I think they shoot something to demonstrate what that gun can do. They shoot a rock or something and it disintegrates. That's a great pose. All of these covers or chapter headers work for me. Yeah, so here we're going to see a demonstration of what this gun can do. So
I love this right here because it's like, this is such a hard piece to draw. You don't see it much. You usually see people with their hand down, and like, it's totally wrong. Also,
look at how he's like rigged something up with this rope.
Yeah.
I can't tell you exactly what's going on here, but it appears there's something that's really seems like it might be rooted in reality. A demonstration of what this gun does. Almost entirely vaporized. So if this guy turns evil, this is what they want him to do. This is almost Marvel Age of Comics now. We're gonna blast this dude with some gamma radiation and turn him into an X-Man.
Numbering the panels. I feel like that's the first time we saw that, unless I just wasn't paying attention.
I think you're right. And if this is the first story in that Bat manga reprint, like maybe this is an early working out how to do this in early issues. And that's your X-Men version of this guy who's giving up being human.
Pretty rad.
How about that? You could get batarangs. Looks great, right? It's weird that it's Robin's head is in his crotch, but otherwise looks pretty cool.
Robin has that Pat Sajak, Burt Ward hair.
It's a big hair. The helmet.
WYSIWYG head.
So there's your Bat manga, and a lot of interesting choices, I think, from a design standpoint, and a lot of interesting chances to like take a look at the superhero genre and see how that translates. You know, because this is kind of fresh eyes that are being applied by obviously a master cartoonist, but looking at the stuff that we take for granted here as being, you know, some of the biggest selling comics in history. What's that like? What are the boil that down?
Yeah.
Translate that into manga and see what we end up with. And Sal Ferris, this is the third guy. This is the person who kind of brought the Bat manga to Chip Kid's attention, and I think worked a little bit on probably providing some of the color interstitials that we looked at.
These are classic villains. I just saw Brian Bolland draw those recently.
Yeah, pretty fun stuff. Wonder how big these were. They look like little stamps.
I think they're cards.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think they're little cards. So just before we get out of here, man, that isn't the last Bat manga.
No.
This is the Silent Mobius guy.
I didn't realize that's who.
Yeah, did a manga, and this will be an episode. I think we should read this. This was sent in by somebody in the Cartoonist Kayfabe audience, man. So shouts to the Kayfabers that send us comics, because this was never on my radar.
Yeah, I think I may have some of these issues. I think this was done as like a mini series, and then maybe the book collection. Pretty cool to see, though. You know, like these different iterations of these characters, very exciting. There was one in Marvel had done with Wolverine called Snicked. Mm-hmm. It was also a mangaka, but doing a X-Men comic.
And the other piece that we just can't ever sleep on is Katsuhiro Otomo in Batman Black and White. First round did about an 8-pager.
Yeah. And I mean, you know, Tony Wong of Jade Man fame.
I didn't know that.
Did a Batman. We did an episode on it.
I didn't know he did a Batman.
Yeah. Did a Batman. So there's an episode of that out there if people want to track back through our archives and check that one out. But there's Bat manga. That's your first iteration, and successful enough that a couple volumes have followed since then.
And remaindered, man, so you could get them for super cheap.
Yeah, I don't know if that means they were super popular. Big print run, maybe.
Yeah,
they do float around. So
that's not what all these promotes as soon as you walk in the door.
Track them down.
Good to go?
I am.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. Jimmy, what's out there?
Hulk Grand Design, the oversized treasury collection of my Hulk Grand Design Monster Madness series, will be in stores hopefully in time for Christmas. You can pre-order that now wherever books are bought and sold. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, back in print from Image Comics. Should be in your local shops any day if it's not already there. You can pick that up again wherever you pick up books. And join me on patreon.com/JimRugg to see a lot more of my comics and art.
Red Room trigger warnings hitting the stands within a couple of weeks of this recording. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit is the name of the game. You're getting 60 plus new pages worth of material in the new Red Room trigger warnings trade paperback, and it is a great companion to the previous Antisocial Network TPB that is already out there, man. Get them both. You can read new Red Room comics at my Patreon, patreon.com/EdPiscor. $3 for the archive there. Have all of the existing Red Room material that hit print, and I'm serializing new stuff up there. Like I said, $3 for all of that. What else do we have out there, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise at the links below this video.
Another great way to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Jimmy, given the marching orders, we'll be on our way.
Read more comics. That should have been a read more manga. See, this is what the people at home are getting to see the bonus material.
Yeah. Oh, jeez.
Ed, you didn't sound like you enjoyed this one.
Just don't leave me hanging, man.
Here, how about that?
Whenever you're ready.
All right, man. Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piscor.
Before we dive into today's book, I want to call attention to our road trip in October. We will be at Columbus CXC October 6th through the 9th. Come out and say hello. Let us know in the comments what we should pull out from the Billy Island when we're there to maybe make a special episode or two. At the end of the month, we will close out October at Baltimore Comic-Con, October 28th to the 30th. Anybody that hasn't come to Baltimore Comic-Con, this is a comic book fans show. So come check that out. Say hello. Let's talk some comics. This is the birthplace of Cartoonist Kayfabe, by the way. October 22nd, you can catch me in Jacksonville at their public library for a comic and zine fest. So pretty busy October. Speaking of October, here's our 2022 official Cartoonist Kayfabe-tober drawing prompts, and we will be sharing this on our social media as the time gets closer. Hope that a lot of you at home, we know you're cartoonists and makers, so hopefully you'll jump on board the Cartoonist Kayfabe-tober and draw some of these things.
Yeah, we'll retweet and repost a lot of that stuff. You just got to tag Cartoonist Kayfabe. Doing the @ isn't going to do it because we're just not going to see it, but if you tag us, we'll be able to go through tags and repost some of that stuff.
Sounds good. And we are working cartoonists, so the best way you can support Cartoonist Kayfabe, the channel, is buy our comics. Hulk Grand Design Monster Madness, a retelling of the 60-year history of the Incredible Hulk. The comics are in stores now. The collection will be in stores in December. You can pre-order that now. Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, the second printing out from Image Comics now, available wherever you buy comics. This collects all of my Image Comics Street Angel, plus a few extra bonus stories. Red Room Trigger Warnings, the second season of Red Room, in stores in September, and you can see this is a real book. It's really going to make it in time. Pick that up wherever you get comics or books, and look at the perfect companion piece to Red Room, the Antisocial Network, last year's season of Red Room, so pick these up wherever books are bought and sold. So today, Ed, we're going to look at Venom, Lethal Protector, #1. This is 1992, one of the top 5 books of 1992 in terms of sales. I was looking at some of these popular books throughout the 90s and was surprised to find that we had covered all of the books from this year. Wildcats #1, Death of Superman, Spider-Man 2099, and Spawn #8 all make it onto that list with Venom, Lethal Protector. So Venom doing a face turn here, and you can see this is early 90s. You get this metallic foil stamp cover. Got to have a gimmick cover on a top-selling book, right?
Shiny, yeah, man. And it's the Silver Sable, like all of that stuff. We did a video a long time ago, man. It's like proto kayfabe video when we're going through Todd's New Dimension comics. And
yes,
that lady
Amanda.
Yeah. Like she showed off. She's like, my brother got me this comic.
Yes. Whenever she was a young comics reader.
And you were like, well, if you still have it, it's worth $1 because it was down in the dollar boxes.
Right. Fun cover. I do like that. You know, Venom, a photogenic character, always looked pretty cool. Hard to draw a bad Venom.
The game of telephone that is played with Venom, like if you track like all of his drawing appearances over the years, like watching him morph and watching that mandible jaw get distorted more and more and more.
The other piece that's tame on this, he has a wicked tongue at times.
The tongue,
that is a very human, very basic tongue compared to some of the stuff that we would see Eric Larson do with that thing.
Oh yeah.
So Mark Bagley, a longtime Spider-Man artist, is the artist that is tasked with this. I bought this back in the day and then got rid of it. This is a new copy. We're going to find what happens when you buy dollar copies of Venom as we get through this.
Cover, actually.
It's going to get worse. But I remember back in the day being disappointed because Venom, Todd McFarlane character, right?
Yeah.
Eric Larson went pretty wild with him. And I always thought Mark Bagley was this cleaner, more classic superhero style, not the right fit for Venom. Yeah. I wanted Tex, Kelly Jones, somebody that was going to push the monster side of Venom harder. And so that was one of the missteps back in the day for me.
More than that, Bagley might be stretching himself with a couple other comics at the same time. So this is pretty dashed out kind of Bagley. And also, this is the post-Jim Lee era. Nature abhors a vacuum. Marvel needs some of that kind of energy. So he's doing what like Herb Trimpe had to do and what like Alex Saviuk had to do, where has to inject these like unnatural to him kind of hatchings and shit like that.
Yeah.
And you could tell it's not comfortable for him. Like this isn't his natural flow. This ain't his style.
This is also coated paper.
Yeah.
So, this is kind of a prestige project in that way. It's a $3 cover price, and it's dated here February 93. So maybe it's 93, not 92, but it's a premium book, $3 at that time. A lot of Marvel books, $1.25 maybe back then. And it's notable to me, Della Rosa and Milgram as inkers. So the reason I make note of that is you've got a kind of prestigious project on your hands here. It's a big push, sold well, Venom's popular, and yet you've got different inkers on issue 1. Like, are there deadline issues already at play in issue 1 of like a big project for Marvel?
Well, this is the era where stuff is the bubble has just burst, so it's more important to get issue number 1 out. So get a couple of inkers on the job. I was talking with Greg Wright, and he said that like one of the most reliable hands at the time was Mark Bagley. Turn a book around 2-3 weeks.
Yeah.
So he can do his job quick, but it doesn't mean an inker's going to be able to ink.
It's a good payoff too for Bagley, presumably. Absolutely. The third biggest seller of the year, a guy who sticks with Marvel when all these other guys leave.
Absolutely.
So it's nice to see somebody get rewarded for that. Good for him. This panel, tell me what's happening there, because I can't.
Yeah, I know, man. I'm presuming that he's filling him up with some symbiote, but it looks almost like vomit, and it's coming out like he's doing like you said a funny joke to him after you drank some coffee.
Right. That is what it looks like.
It feels more exit than entrance.
Kills the guy.
Yeah.
Whatever this does, it kills him. It's over. You'll do nothing but decay now. Wow. Pretty casual and just killing this guy on page 3.
Yeah.
But this is, like I said, it's a face turn for Venom, who moves to San Francisco area to start over. I think Spider-Man saved somebody's life, somebody Venom loved, so he had to kind of like admit Spider-Man's good, even though he still hates him. And that's part of why he moved away, so that he wouldn't be have to be at war with Spider-Man.
This is a very bad comic, man. Like the exposition of like single dude just rolling around, but I guess we have the benefits of multiple personalities or whatever. There's all this so we get to have Venom just like explain the whole story. It's not, we're being told a story. We're not being shown a story here. We're being told all the back matter that happened in Amazing Spider-Man comics.
It's very true. And I like Bagley's art for the most part. But man, whenever you think about sort of the way Larson and McFarlane would do just nuts poses of Spider-Man, giant Spider-Mans, whenever you get these kind of pages, I could use a little bit more flair here.
Yeah, for sure. And they would also sell you more on like some impact of like jumping off of this thing. You'd see this getting turned up or accordioned or, folded like a taco or something. But you just get like little lines. So he's a very classic guy. He's a hand. He's a job dude. And also Eddie Brock with the mullet. Like the mullet wasn't cool right then.
Yeah, it's back now, I think, right?
Yeah, with a certain segment.
What is his t-shirt? HTND? Do you know what that means?
I think it's a swinger club.
Is he sneaking something in there?
All the ladies that like, she's my cherry pie. Like they like that mullet and they hang out with him at the swinger bars.
Look at this. No pets parties, loud music, blah, 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 blah. Youngbloods. No Youngbloods.
Dave Michelini, man.
Not subtle either. It's almost like your letter might have lettered that sign. The cops find out that Eddie Brock is there, and of course, he's wanted for murder, and they show up and now blows his cover. Where is he going to sleep? Can't even check into a hotel room without things going wrong.
And that's those like, by the half hour hotel rooms in the Tenderloin, man. Anybody could get a hotel there.
Spider-Man, comes across the wires that Venom's been spotted in San Francisco.
So we get even more exposition. So much exposition explaining all this stuff, and it's just...
There's a lot.
It's just so boring.
Yeah, this is the worst example of like the every issue is somebody's first. But this is an issue 1. Like there's got to be a better way to communicate some of this stuff than have just exposition on exposition. Like we've had now, this is, I believe, the 4th page of exposition, and we're, I don't know, 9 pages in. Yeah,
or you just don't do it. Like in like writing master classes and like you read these books on writing, they'll say stuff like, if you go to a party and you meet somebody and they tell you about all of their good qualities and stuff, Do you believe them? And that's what you're getting here. You're having Spider-Man like say all this stuff, and it's could be unreliable narrative. It's kind of meaningless. Show us. And every creative writing teacher says stuff like, I wish I had a rubber stamp that just said show don't tell, that I could just put on everybody's paper, because that's a common lesson that I have for almost 100% of my students. And that's what this is. Like, we're not being shown a story here.
So I don't remember all the particulars of this series, but I think he ends up taking up with homeless people.
I mean, we'll get that in this issue.
And I feel like this actually is kind of a slick into that. You know, like he's walking around like, what am I going to do? How am I going to get a room? He's essentially worried about being homeless whenever he stumbles on some homeless people that are being accosted by these, typecast dudes right out of like Canon films with their suits.
Yeah.
Attacking these homeless people, and kind of stumbles into that. Like, this feels like the most organic piece, not the most exciting page, but a very, very organic way that this comes about. This could have been really heavy-handed.
And, like, they're probably trying to get them out of there for some bullshit Marvel, like, secret potion. This is funny.
This is my dollar. This is my proof of my dollar. I assume that this panel is really cool probably here that's cut out. But I don't think I am confused by what's missing.
Sure.
I'm able to still follow this story.
But, like, if this was a modern-day comic, you could imagine that there would be, like, bad guys, like, just trying to get the people who have rent control out of their fucking spaces right away, so that we can, get a Twitter person and a Google person to like be part of a rent auction.
Okay.
But like it's probably some sort of potion or something that these people have knowledge about, that they need to get offed by these gangsters.
When Spider-Man learns that Venom's in San Francisco, he hops a plane there, and so now we get Spider-Man in issue 1 joining the fracas in the park.
I feel like in a panel, like it's like quick. Oh man, I need to go. Yeah, like right here, man, I better go to San Francisco, and then he's there the next moment. See, this
the time doesn't add up.
This is some of the stuff I'm talking about, where this is very unnatural Mark Bagley. Like, he's totally like, I could just imagine him like looking at, I feel like we saw Professor X with all these same marks from the Shi'ar issue with Wolverine holding, like, about to claw him on the cover. So Bagley is being stretched in a way that's not comfortable to him.
You know what else? Like, Bagley does a really good Spider-Man, in my opinion.
Yeah.
This looks rushed. Like, I don't understand if you have a big number 1 that you're launching, and I know you say you got to capitalize on it, but at the same time, like, this feels like they're really putting this together quickly.
Yeah.
This has to be just a cool shot of him and Venom fighting, I guess.
Yeah.
Love this, though. The bad guys don't care who it is, and they just unload on everybody.
Straight Canon films. I think I see Omwat in the in a shooting gallery. You see him? Front and center.
Awesome. Any of these dudes could be Omwat. Omwat could have used a bit of a ponytail.
That's true.
Yeah.
Omwat 2. Let's get a sequel.
Exactly.
Ben, are you out there?
So weirdly, suddenly they're allies, right? Protect these innocent people. Get rid of the people who are just firing guns into that crowd, and weirdly team up. It's fun that they sort of end that as a team up, and here we have the news footage of them fighting.
Right.
And I get it. Like, this is probably the panel that's actually cut out of right here, I bet. But it's still funny. It's kind of I say it every episode, it feels like, that nothing changes in 30 years. So here's our 30-year-old comic where homelessness is a problem. Media coverage is not necessarily accurate to what we're seeing. Very, very strange.
How much time would you pour over these?
I spent more time on most of these than I did on the comics.
Yeah.
I wasn't reading this stuff back then.
Yeah.
I was I wanted to see cool pictures of Venom. But like, this kind of stuff just is not that exciting. The other thing that I see here is coated paper. Now you've introduced like a whole new element to the digital coloring.
Yeah.
And nobody's on board yet.
No.
Like, it's so weird to figure out, like, we looked at the Kevin Nolan Batman Outsiders issue, where it's like, how do you color on Baxter paper? What colors do you use from that usual palette? Once you get to like digital color on coated paper, it's a whole new learning curve. Like, this is practically a different medium.
It takes Marvel and DC years to catch up to what the Image guys are doing, like the Ollie Optics kind of energy, the Ruben Roods and the Joe Chiodos and the Kiko Takanashis. they did not have those kinds of people until they absorb Wildstorm or whatever in DC's case, and I don't know that Marvel ever caught up. I was fully checked out. I haven't seen a Marvel comic that had all the optics level computer coloring,
because that was always kind of a freelance gig, and buying hardware and learning that software was just too cost intensive for a freelance colorist.
Yeah.
So you had to have those couple of those places like the Dark Horse Studios or
Dark Horse wasn't even good at it.
They may not have been good at it, but they had their own color lab.
Yeah.
Compared to, again, like Marvel, I don't think had any of that. So here's our story, right? These are the homeless people. They live in some of these tunnels. This reminded me. Do you remember that documentary in the early 2000s of like the tunnels
Dark
and the people
Days.
that lived
Great
in
documentary.
New York? I think is where that was set.
Yeah,
but it was in the tunnels and like some of the homeless people there. Kind of reminds me of that a little bit.
Yeah. Where they said the whole communities, and it's a more realistic. It's not this ain't the Morlocks.
Yeah, right. And they're talking about one, whether or not he can even join them, and then like two, this Roland Treese, who's been trying to drive us out of this area for months. That's who those hired thugs were from. So you're getting like clearly that's the story here. And now let's do some Marvel stuff. But see, this is the disappointing color too. Like we're underground already. We're doing these kind of like browns and oranges. And now we get cool robots and they're just orange.
Yeah.
Like they just blend into that background.
Yeah, not very good.
Not very good.
Not inspired. This whole comic, in one word, uninspired. On everybody's part.
Yeah, and you know what's really disappointing to me? Okay, we're going to do a bunch of orange. Venom's blue, so maybe that makes sense. Yellows and oranges, he's a complementary color. He should pop. But half the time, they're drawing him. He's gray here. He's orange here. Like, make him blue in these panels. At least make him pop against those orange and yellow robots that he's facing.
Right. Little Rick Parker cameo piece.
Joey Cavalieri doing the Stan's soapbox. Joey's joint here. I always think of Cavalieri as a DC editor that had a really good eye for talent, but I didn't realize he had done a stint at Marvel first.
Me neither.
And look at this. The bubble's bursting, man. We are just trying to unload like 10 color independent comics, 10 black and white independent comics. We are just giving out like big discounts on packs of comics.
When you start getting non-discriminate, there's overhead that needs to be taken care of, man.
You still have your who are the hot characters though? A Wolverine grab bag, a Ghost Rider grab bag, $10. Punisher $8, Hulk only $7.
That feels right.
X-Men $10. So that's basically our story. The robots kind of start to overcome Venom, and I guess there's one last piece. Somehow falling through those tunnels with the robots on top of them, they've fallen through time.
Of course, man. You need some excuse to read the second issue. I think this is Bagley also.
It is.
And it's really cool. Like, you sort of see what he does, man. This is Steve Ditko profile with McFarlane eye. He's like bringing both sensibilities, man. The anatomy feels a little more subtle.
Yeah, I like the cartooniness of this. It almost feels like what we would see in like the Batman animated series once they would overhaul those characters and do the more cartoony stuff.
Yeah,
Bagley, I think, is a really good Spider-Man artist. Would do Ultimate Spider-Man whenever they launched that Ultimate line. But you know what? If you read the fine print, so we're talking about how this looks like maybe it's done quickly. He's also doing an anniversary issue of Spider-Man. He might have done Spider-Man this whole run, like simultaneously. He might have stayed on Amazing Spider-Man. But this issue's 64 pages. So now you're doing like a new book you're launching, still drawing Spider-Man and doing anniversary oversized issues.
He made some good cash that year, man.
Yeah, it was a good year for sure. But a good artist. And the guy that came through the Marvel tryout issues.
Yes.
Seems like that's popped up a couple times in the last couple issues, and Bagley's the guy.
Yes, he won it.
My Bagley stuff is always New Warriors,
Absolutely.
where I didn't even know who he was at first. I bought it because it was a new series and then fell in love with his work on that.
Yeah, he was a regular name, like when you were getting those comics, and he would stretch. He was a John Byrne level of output kind of guy. You'd see his name 2-3 times a month.
Looking through this, I saw little shades of like a Ron Frenz in his work. It's a classic. It's almost like what I think of as 80s, like that Marvel toy almost. It kind of has that quality. So pretty neat. I like this cover. I hated the inside. This issue was just like, I'm surprised that you're going to launch Venom, and this is I don't know, that's the best you can come up with.
Yeah, that exposition stuff is just we've seen like comics started off way better than that. You know, like we just launch
That's
us
the
in the
thing.
middle and just we'll handle the origin stuff. Like, do we even need it? Like, you have this cool character, it sells itself. You know, this is like that wrestling stuff where you got the giant. Now, how are you possibly going to fuck that up?
I even like the concept. Like, he leaves New York, he goes to San Francisco, where he's from, and he struggles to fit in there, and he falls in with this homeless group of people. All of that, I think, can work really well.
Yeah.
And then we're going to do, like, a time travel story, and we're going to bring Spider-Man in. Like, I don't know, man. It's third highest selling comic of the year, though, back in the day. Back in the years when they were selling a lot of comics, like, third highest selling comic of that year, probably north of 1 million copies of this sold that year.
Good looking logo, man. Chris Eolopoulos is in the chat right now. Said he made the
nice.
logo for that, and this is carry on throughout. Like whenever you see like Venom mentioned in a video game or something, like this is the logo.
It pops. It's a good cover.
Off.
I like the cover a lot. I think they did very well on that. I'm sure that's helped sell quite a few of those 1 million plus copies. But yeah, the inside story, I didn't stick with it back in the day either.
And you're not inspired to go back and
I'm not reading issue 2. No.
You good to go?
I am.
Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell, we'll notify you when new vids are available. What's out there, Jimmy?
Hulk Grand Design, the collection is coming out in December. Need to pre-order that now at your local comic shop. Street Angel, Deadliest Girl Alive, the second printing should be in stores any day now if it's not already there, from Image Comics, collecting all of my Image comics of this homeless ninja on a skateboard. Might get along with Venom from this limited series. And you can join me on patreon.com/JimRug, where you can see a lot more of my comics. You can download some of my out-of-print zines and mini comics there, and that link is below this video.
Red Room trigger warnings, trade paperback hitting the stands in a few weeks from now as of this recording.
And the proof, having the book.
No, it's
nice.
so good, man. Yeah, it's so cool when you get your comps, right? You carry it around like a little baby.
Oh, absolutely.
For a week at least, man. Lots of new artwork. Yeah, there it is. Hokuto Shinken. Lots of new artwork. About 60 pages of extra stuff in there. Great companion piece to go along with the original Antisocial Network trade paperback. These are self-contained stories, so take your pick, give it a shot. You dig it, grab another one. You can hit up my Patreon at my link tree in the description below. You can grab these books at my link tree in the description below. At my Patreon, I'm serializing new Red Room comics that haven't hit paper yet. So $3 will get you the archive, which is all of this material. Plus, I put new strips up every Tuesday. $3, you can't beat it. What else do we have out there, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise at the links below this video.
Another great way to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Jimmy, give them the marching orders, man. We'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
You know, relatively painless. I think we went easy on them.
There's some bad 90s comics that I used to read, man.
Shouts to Chris in the chat, man. You've been coming up quite a bit in our recording session today. We looked at the Revenge of the Sinister Six issues of Spider-Man, and we're making note of your association with Eric Larson. So you just came across these shits in a quarter bin, right?
Yeah, whenever I started buying up like 90s kind of, you know, like rebuying a lot of the 90s stuff, I came across these and was like, oh yeah, this is part of that cliffhanger group. Let me give this a shot.
Yeah.
These are, well, we'll save it for the record.
Yeah, whenever you're ready, man.
Do we need to lock that in again?
You said this is one of the better ones?
I think it's pretty good. But yeah, we'll talk about it on here.
Yeah. Ready?
Yep, hit it. Hello and welcome to Cartoonist Kayfabe. My name is Jim Rugg.
I'm Ed Piskor.
Want to bring attention to our October road tripping. October 6th to the 9th, you can find us in Columbus at CXC. Stop by, talk some comics, check out the Billy Ireland while you're there. At the end of the month, October 28th to the 30th, you can find us at Baltimore Comic-Con, a great comic book convention and the birthplace of Cartoonist Kayfabe, where we first started putting this channel together in 2018. So we'll be back at the end of October to celebrate that anniversary. In the meantime, you can catch me October 22nd at the Jacksonville Public Library for a comic and zine fest. This is our list for the 2022 official Cartoonist Kayfabe-tober drawing prompts. We will be posting this and sharing it on social media as we get closer to October. And tag us in your drawings, and we'll be posting and sharing those whenever we see them as well. Should be a very fun month, and I always enjoy seeing what people come up with for some of these. So in this case, it gets to be some of our favorite stuff that we'll see the Kayfabe Nation drawing and representing. We are working Cartoonist. The way you can support Cartoonist Kayfabe is to buy our comics. Hulk Grand Design Monster Madness is in stores now. 2 40-page issues tell the 60-year history of the Incredible Hulk. The oversized collection, the Treasury size edition, will be in stores in December for Christmas. Pre-order that now wherever books are, wherever you buy books. Street Angel Deadly Scroll Live from Image Comics, the collection of all of my Street Angel comics from Image, plus a few that weren't published. Back in print, should be in comic shops any day if it's not already there. Red Room, Trigger Warnings, the collection of the 2022 season of Ed Piskor's Red Room, coming to comic shops in September. You can still pre-order that if you haven't already. Should be in stores in a couple of weeks, and you can see it exists. Makes a very nice companion to the Antisocial Network. Those will look great on your shelf. Both are self-contained, so buy whichever one you come in contact with first. So today we're going to continue looking at Cliffhanger. We have seen Danger Girl and Battle Chasers so far. This was kind of like late 90s, an attempt by Image to create some excitement with a new generation of cartoonists who had built some following and were going to get to do their own creations.
The way I would describe it, Cliffhanger, is like the art style of mainstream comics was evolving away from Jim Lee. It was a little more humorous, a little bit more manga, anime inspired, Japanese comics inspired. You had J. Scott Campbell, you had Joe Madureira and Humberto Ramos like popping up sort of at the tail end of that pack. Big eyes, more cartoony,
big feet,
closer to the manga idiom, and they totally fit tidily together under this imprint. It makes sense.
Yeah, and it's been interesting to me because these are the 3 books that I remembered.
Yeah.
And there are at least 5, I think there might be 6 Cliffhanger titles.
I know Steampunk was one of these.
Steampunk, right. Yeah, that's the other one that I think of as like the main one.
Yeah.
But I have found a couple more since then. So we may continue diving through Cliffhanger because some of it's very new to me.
Jimmy, if you do that, I swear we're going to do more Age of Apocalypse.
Oh, man. That's well, maybe this will be the end of our Cliffhanger coverage. But the cool thing with Crimson is I believe this was the longest running series of any of these things.
Yeah.
I think there were north of 20 issues of this published, which speaks to maybe Ramos's commitment to this idea, which is about a young vampire. Hey, Adam Warren on this cover, the variant cover here, I thought that was kind of cool to see him, at this time, because I mean he goes on to do a bunch of stuff at Wild Storm. Yeah, I was going to say, he may have already been on that paycheck at this point. But you see Humberto Ramos as the pencils here, and also a story concept with a couple of his buddies. I think from Mexico City, they talk about in the back matter here, which is kind of cool. And Brian Augustine, did they work together at DC? Is that where he's bringing this writer in?
Well, Brian Augustine would work at DC, but as far as I know, like Impulse, that's like just Mark Waid.
Okay, all right. Yeah, not somebody. This was my first intro to Ramos. Like I was not following him on his DC work. Whenever there was news about this line in this book, you would get a little bit of backstory on him, but I wasn't reading his DC comics. So pretty new to me seeing this stuff. And when I sat down this week to read this, I was so mad at this.
I was mad at you.
This is all like a creation story, basically Old Testament story of creation here, but it deviates from the Bible as we get to this point where there are some other non-human races, I should say, which includes vampires and various monsters and fallen angels and things of that sort as we get further from the Bible and closer to the Crimson world here, the modern day.
Let's just start on this page.
That's where I really started. I skimmed a lot of this stuff.
Just fucking start on this page. Like, okay, it's issue 1. So you're going to, like, it's clear that you're going to put us through the paces of having to do, like, the origin of your character. But don't give us the origin of the fucking universe.
Yes.
For 5 pages.
Not the most dynamic way to start your story.
Holy shit.
Talk about, like, let's just get into the car. Like, we can all understand a bunch of kids on a weekend out fooling around. That makes perfect sense. We don't need a lot of explanation. And I think it's a stronger story if you hit the ground here without kind of like all that backstory.
In medias res.
But here we go.
Maybe even right here. That's a good splash page.
That is a good splash page. But this is part of our vampire gang, right? And kind of cool right out the bat. They attack these kids. and they destroy them.
Yeah, it's like we need
Like-
the drink, but also we don't need competition. Kill these motherfuckers.
Yeah, and it's pretty violent, man. They're ripping people apart.
It is, but this art style is so incongruous to the subject matter that it's just like, whatever. I'm never like horrified or anything.
No, that's true. I like there's an 8-Ball shout out. I feel like that's not accidental.
It's accidental. These guys don't know 8-Ball. Give me a fucking break, man. This guy knows 8-Ball, please.
So you get your vampire gang attacking these kids whenever one of these vampires shows up and pretty much rescues our hero. I guess our hero is Crimson.
Yeah.
Is that his
The
name?
thing about the style is it's so rooted in that exact period of time. Those like late mid 90s, Janko jeans, hookups, Pacific Sunwear clothes and shit like that. Like it's completely stuck right there. It hasn't aged well, and is just, it's a 90s comic. You will not mistake this for anything but a 1990s comic.
Vampire Hunter as well.
Of course.
Got to introduce
You got to
that.
have one of those.
Yeah. So you've got vampires, bad guys. You got vampire hunters, and our hero is going to be a vampire.
Yeah. And
This is backstory of him falling out with his family.
And it's like, what's the point? Like, I like cool panel layouts and stuff, but like, there's no real reason for there to be sticks for the panel.
Yeah, I don't know what the sticks mean. These are flashback panels,
Right.
so at least you're not getting your black line to denote that there's something different here. But
There's nothing clever.
yeah, you're not. It's not clear why those would be sticks,
Yeah.
unless
And
that's,
it's not stakes.
Well, I was gonna say that's the only connection I can make is like we're segueing somehow from the arrows, right? The wooden stakes through the vampire heart to that, but maybe a stretch there. Not sure what the thinking is behind it. Look at the eyeballs. Like talk about stylized stylized art. Like that's a wild face. All kind of proportions all over the place. That nose. There's a lot going on there. I kind of like it.
Yeah, I don't. And it's just like it's the derivative of like all the best of that stuff, and it kind of like here's an attempt at all of, but it doesn't have the lessons, like there's something about like when you look at Madureira's, it's tighter, like it feels more solid. You feel the volume of the shapes and stuff. You never feel that here. Like he's definitely super stylized, so he has his own way of doing drapery and like you said, shoes, hands. For those tears.
No mouth.
I want to see this in black and white, this piece.
Yeah. I would look at that. I actually prefer this to what's the Joe Mad? Battle Chasers. Yeah, I feel like this story is more interesting to me than that one.
Well, there's a Battle Chasers image in here, and I'll take that out because all this stuff is just for the art anyhow. Like
that's very true.
The stories are nonsense. So I'll take Joe Mad.
He also does the 2 teeth instead of the incisors. Just the 2 teeth on the side that are your vampire fangs.
Right.
Usually they're like 4 teeth, and then you get the vampire fangs. Mm-hmm. Your incisors, your canines.
Right.
So that's a slight different variation.
It's kind of cool because I
wonder if Buffy is out at this point.
I
think
so.
it is.
I don't know. I don't think so.
I'm pretty sure it is.
But you know who would look like this, man?
This is 98.
Is Bat Boy from like Weekly World News would have his like gimmicks like that.
Also naked, but nothing there. No turtle tail between his legs.
You see how wild? Like there's like underdrawing stuff that just feels like it's not there, and a lot of like design of like your pages and compositions and stuff. One of the things they say is like try to make it feel like it works as a silhouette, like just an outline. Like that doesn't.
Yeah, that would be a strange silhouette. This is that. There's a different proportion that's being laid on here, and it might come from Impulse. Again, I never looked at Impulse, so I can't really speak to that. But there feels like there's an attempt to make this a teenage boy instead of like a dude, like an adult.
Yeah.
And that's something we talk about. Usually it's kids that are like the weird proportions. But in this case, I think that's what you're getting with some of this stuff. And it reminds me of that Neil Adams quote about like, draw the thing that you're thinking of, and not what you not necessarily lines. Know how to draw.
Yeah.
And I think that probably serves this well over time because at some point this becomes the codified, like this is your 16-year-old boy, as opposed to like a bunch of same-bodied men running around, but you have to believe this is a kid.
Right.
And I have no idea what his story is. The guy that rescued him, trying to teach him how to.
You just had to read the first 5 pages.
Is that right? Is he a good guy
so.
within that?
I think so. And like, colorists pulling a lot of heavy lift in with the lighting on the teeth and stuff.
You know, the other place that Ramos, I think, comes from is something with Joe Quesada and Event Comics. I think he may have done a book with them because he shouts them out in the back matter as well.
That makes sense, man. Because he's taken, like, there's Quesada pieces to this. There's Joe Mad pieces to this. There's J. Scott Campbell pieces. And he just distills it into his own thing.
I kind of like this character design.
Cool design.
I feel like that's pretty neat.
Cool design, and also very 90s with the coveralls. And
this is definitely very
baggy,
90s.
The baggy joints.
Absolutely. But I don't mind that. Like, all of this stuff is pretty 90s, like this cliffhanger stuff. None of it had legs.
No.
You know, like, this is the closest to any of it is going on beyond that initial push. And I like that the gang has some of these various personality types. Feels like that's what he spent some time working out in the sketchbooks. You know, you get your guy with the cowboy hat. This dude's like, I feel like this dude is right out of like a Sergio Leone kind of Western. That's a weird angle. So we see the wanted poster, right? Turns out he's been out a month. That's a fun narrative choice. But should he really go visit his family? He does, but he doesn't actually go in there. A little bit too much of a risk. He's very hungry for blood.
Yeah.
That's the story, is that he's rejected all these people trying to feed him blood. And they're like, well, it's going to happen. You'll become pretty much an animal and not be able to control yourself. So now that he's close to his family, what do you do?
That's his little sister, you know? He sees her and now he's hungry. So he's starting to get ravenous.
And I feel like that's a good image to end on. That's a real monstrous image.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but it's still cartoony. Like, it's just,
I like cartoony.
I like cartoony too. Not for a vampire. Like, what you're trying to sell me on like a big horror thing, and it just, you know, it's incongruous. Doesn't gel together.
Look at the outfit that he's going to become. And I guess maybe this is a time trip or two back to 42nd Street.
Yeah, he's totally going to like a leather daddy bar. He's going to those bars from that Al Pacino movie Cruisin'. That's what that outfit's about.
Did he do DV8? Is that part of his credits?
Yeah, I don't know.
And if so, is that before, after, or during this?
Yeah, I don't know.
So there's your credits page, or editorial page too, to give some background of where he's coming from, how he gets to this point. And
okay, there it is, man. Buffy was definitely going on.
Right.
Like that's the chick.
I think the movie came out in like 95.
The movie was like 1990.
Like maybe it was earlier, like 92.
Because it wasn't this chick.
No,
it
right.
Was I forget her name.
Yeah, I forget it too. I saw it in the theater.
Yeah, with Luke Perry.
Yeah. Maybe we'll cut that part. But I do have a couple issues of these. Like, this is a series that I see in that dollar bins a lot. And I appreciate the stylization. So I may read more of this.
And I won't. Good to go?
I am.
All right, Kayfabers, like, follow, subscribe to the YouTube channel. Hit the bell. We'll notify you when new vids are available. What's out there, man?
Hulk Grand Design is out there now in comic book form. Monster Madness. It will be available in December for Christmas as an oversized collection with a fluorescent green cover that you cannot miss, and 40 extra pages or so of material. So pre-order that today if you haven't already. You can also join me on patreon.com/JimRugg, where you can see a lot more of my comics and download some of my out-of-print zines and minis. And you can pick up Street Angel Deadliest Girl Alive, that's been out of print for a year, back in print now from Image Comics.
Red Room Trigger Warnings hitting the stands in a couple of weeks from this recording. Murder on the Dark Web for Fun and Profit. It collects the 2022 season of Red Room Comics, but there's about 60 pages of additional stuff in this book to kind of tie it all together as its own unit. Every story is completely self-contained, so grab any of the trades, any order, doesn't matter. I have a link tree in the description below this video. You can order these comics, pre-order future comics, and my Patreon has all of these comics up there for $3. Plus, I'm serializing strips that aren't going to hit paper until 2023. $3, all it costs. Support the comic that way. What else do we have out there, Jimmy?
Subscribe to the Cartoonist Kayfabe e-newsletter at the links below this video. You can also find Cartoonist Kayfabe t-shirts and merchandise at the links below this video.
Another great way to support the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel. Jimmy, give them the marching orders. We'll be on our way.
Read more comics.
take us through Inkle for a bit, do my optic nerve, and we'll be done. We'll just comment on the art and stuff. We say that we got this, you know, from Human. Yeah.
Do you want me to do optic nerve? You can do Inkle.
You handle it. Like I'll take care of that, man, because I got a bunch of big videos I already recorded. And you know, it'll be as brief as you want with it.
Do you think that we should start past the first volume since we have a video on
It's
it?
just a conversation, like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just a conversation we're gonna have. So I think we should see that, like, eventually we got to do the whole thing. I think there's what, five stories
Edition.
Yeah, there's only 3 in the epics, right?
Yes.
Yeah, just
Oh man.
yeah.
I'm gonna kill myself on this.
No, you just stand up. Yeah, so simple. There you go.
You want the color background on this one?
Yeah, if possible.
Yeah, why not?
Take a look at the screen there and see if the vid's still moving.
There is a loading circle.
Okay.
Is it froze on there?
Yeah.
Do we relaunch it? Do we be done?
We could be done with it. Want me to wrap it up?
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, it says not receiving enough video to maintain smooth streaming.
Yeah, cool.
I'm gonna take a bathroom break.
Yeah, do it. We'll get fresh waters.